Good afternoon. This is the April 14th, 2026 meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll, please? Oh, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Friedman.
That was yesterday.
Here.
Councilmember Santa Maria.
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Snedden.
Here.
Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
And Mayor Rouse.
Here. Very good. And we have some ceremonial items to read.
I'll read both of them. Item 1, Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week. And item 2, National Public Telecommunicator Appreciation Week.
Chief, how are you?
Excellent.
All right. Okay. It's always better to do things for dogs. Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week, April 12th through 18th, 2026. Whereas the National Animal Control Association has designated the second week of April as Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week, and whereas Animal Care and Control Week provides an opportunity to acknowledge the dedicated work of animal care professionals, volunteers, and advocates who tirelessly support animal welfare, impose animal protection laws, and deliver essential services to animals in need. And whereas animals are an integral part of our community, providing companionship, assistance, and joy to countless individuals and families, and whereas through education, outreach, and enforcement efforts, we can help raise awareness about the importance of spaying and neutering pets, keeping vaccinations up to date, providing proper identification, and ensuring animals are treated humanely. And whereas by celebrating Animal Care and Control Week, we pay tribute to the commitment and compassion of those who work tirelessly to ensure that all animals are treated with kindness, respect, and compassion in our community. Now, therefore, I, Randy Rouse, as Mayor of the City of Santa Barbara, do hereby proclaim April 12th through 18th, 2026 to be Animal Care and Control Appreciation Week in Santa Barbara, and encourage all residents to join us in expressing their sincere appreciation for the service and dedicated of our animal control employees. So, very good.
This is the rule that we have. If I make my, if my team members have to say it, then they won't come back to council again. But I just want to acknowledge, as we all know, here in Santa Barbara, we love our pets and love our animals, whether they're wildlife or whether they're domesticated. So we just want to take this moment to acknowledge our small but mighty group of animal control officers that make sure that we all coexist in the proper ways, and really want to thank the compassion and the care that is shown by our animal control officers. So thank you so much.
Don't go away. National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. I'm having a hard time communicating myself. April 12th through 18th, 2026. Whereas the City of Santa Barbara acknowledges the dedication, expertise of communications personnel that help save lives, provide assurance in times of crisis, and uphold the highest standards of public service. And whereas these skilled professionals serve as the lifeline between public and emergency personnel, ensuring that help arrives rapidly when it's needed most. And whereas the safety of our police officers and our community rely on the safety and efficiency of the information gathered by the telecommunicators at the City of Santa Barbara's Communications Center, and whereas these dedicated professionals work tirelessly, often in challenging and strenuous environments, to ensure timely and effective emergency response across services across our city. And whereas National Telecommunicators Appreciation Week serves as a meaningful occasion for our community to recognize and honor the vital contributions of telecommunicators in ensuring public safety and contributing to the quality of life in Santa Barbara. Now, therefore, I, Randy Rouse, as the mayor of the city of Santa Barbara, do hereby proclaim April 12th through 18th, 2026 to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Santa Barbara, in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and its residents safe. Well, congratulations once again, Chief, and all of you.
Same rules apply. Even though they talk on the phone, they don't like to talk in public. So it's a true statement. But I'd like to acknowledge Katie, our dispatch manager. We have two of our dispatchers with us. Dispatcher Rogers and Dispatcher Gonzalez are with us today. But, you know, a lot of the times we get, I guess, community comments about dispatch because they don't understand why we ask all the questions that we ask. They're patient, the compassion, the empathy that they have to show. Call after call after call, whether it is a priority call or whether it's because a barking dog call or other calls, right? It can be a whole variety of things that they have to. But the other side is they're in the dispatch center and they don't actually know always what the outcome is or what's happening. They just hear what's on the radio. And they are literally our lifeline, not just for us, but for the community, because they're the ones that take that initial call, but they're the ones that get us the information that we need so that we can safely respond to the situation and actually know kinda what we're going into. But they are a vital part of our agency. We really appreciate them. And we're very lucky also to have our support dog Coda, who's taking a good snooze nap today. She brings that zen with us. I'm gonna attribute to the zen we started the meeting with to Coda today. So with that, I just wanna say thank you to Katie and to all of our dispatchers. They're a vital part of our department, but even more so that support that they give our community. So thank you.
All right, Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor, no changes that I'm aware of.
Thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, you have some consent items to read?
I do. Item 2, adopt resolution declaring intent to continue wildland fire suppression assessment district for fiscal year 2027, preliminary approving engineer's report and setting June 2nd, 2026 public hearing resolution. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara declaring its intention to continue the wildland fire suppression assessment within the foothill and extreme foothill zones, declaring the work to be more than general or ordinary benefit and describing the district to be assessed to pay the costs and expenses thereof. Preliminarily approving the updated engineer's report, stating intention to continue assessments for fiscal year 2027 and establishing a time of 2 p.m. on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026 in the City Council chambers for a public hearing on the wildland fire suppression assessment. Item 4, resolution affirming the city's commitment to biodiversity protection and restoration resolution. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara affirming the city of Santa Barbara's commitment to biodiversity protection and restoration. Item 5, adoption of wastewater and water systems climate adaptation plan resolution. Recommendation the council adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara adopting the wastewater and water system climate adaptation plan. And that is all for consent to be read, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. Are there any items that need to be pulled by council members for either a separate discussion or vote? Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Item 3, 4, and 6, just for comment, but can vote together.
Okay. Mr. Friedman.
Sorry, item 4 was included in that, and it was just for comment, not a separate vote.
Okay, very good. And then, so we will do those and bring them back after the report from the Ordinance Committee and general public comment. May I then have a motion for the balance, whatever's left of the consent calendar, which looks like it's items 5 and 7A and B.
So moved.
Moved by Harmon,
Second.
second by Jordan. May we have the vote, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a motion by Councilmember Harmon, seconded by Councilmember Jordan, for consent items 5 and 7.
Correct.
Go ahead and vote, please.
That passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And then with that, we will take a report from the Ordinance Committee. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We ran over in time with public comment, and we weren't able to finish the public comment period, so we voted to continue the issue for the following ordinance committee meeting.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on to general public comment. 3 minutes at the dais for anything that is not on today's agenda, but within the purview of this body. And we'll start out with Mark Redmond.
Oh, hello, everybody. Your mayor, your honorship, Eric, Wendy, Oscar. Did they name Gutierrez Street after you? Randy, Kristen, Megan, and Mike. I'm running for mayor. I'm serious. I'm giving it my all. I now run a podcast. Met her on the red carpet. She said, keep doing what you're doing. These kids are dying less. She doesn't believe in the drug situation. The director of the opioid-related data for Santa Barbara County has said it's come down since 2023 when it was at its peak, and we lost 186. Now, the last 2 years, we've only lost 93 individuals to opioids. I go to the drug and alcohol meetings, and I am serious about trying to bring awareness more so than the commercials on television. I talk to the kids. Most of them are in their 20s and 30s that have done drugs. They say, it's so addictive, Mark. I said, look, it's not a badge of honor that you died 5 times. Firemen, the medics, and the police have saved you with Narcan. They give me, I've got 6 of them in my trunk. I gave one to a lady last year out of the Wildcat Lounge that was frothing at the mouth. And then the medics came and she made it. And she's still in our program. Anyway, I wanted to give you some statistics besides that. The Changing Overdose Crisis in Santa Barbara County is a community authorized by Kendall Courtley, a PhD from a professor at Central Florida. And the director here, the opioid and assistant favorite for Santa Barbara is the Sheriff's Office Lieutenant Robert Mentor. You can download this whole report, so I don't need to go on and on about it. Santa Barbara County officials highlighted a decline during the Board of Supervisors meeting March 10th, 2026. Overdose rate has dropped. And as I repeat, it was up to 186 in 2023 at its height. In the last 2 years, we've lost 93 individuals both years. Everybody get their primary election in the mail yesterday like I did. There's a lot of races, Board of Supervisors, governor, goes on and on, lieutenant governor. Anyway, if you pay taxes, that's your best American right, is to vote, make a difference. And I want to work hard. I'm a farm kid from Kansas, just like Kelly McAdoo, who grew up in Ottawa. I grew up in Lewisburg, 30 miles to the east, 6 miles from the misery line we call Missouri. Anyway, everyone have a great day. I love you all over the world, especially in Santa Barbara.
Thank you. Maria Loveday.
Hello, my name is Maria Loveday. I'm a native of Santa Barbara and a resident, and I'm here today to find out who I can talk to about the lack of outdoor public seating and in relation to the ambassador program as well. Because I called Public Works yesterday, talked to Max Thomas, and he said he couldn't answer my questions or provide me with anyone who could, so I came here. Recent examples of removal of public outdoor seating include Alameda Park. When it was just recently repaved, they took out the central seating there. And then the library, when it was renovated, that seating was taken out. Of course, seating on State, you all know about. Those have all been removed because, I guess, of maintenance issues. But prior to that, I believe there were benches all along State, and those were removed even maybe before that. There hasn't been adequate public seating along Cabrillo Boulevard for a very long time. The gazebo at Alameda Park has been closed to everyday people for many years. I'm guessing that the lack of seating, removal of seating is due to loitering and maintenance concerns. Correct me if I'm wrong or I'm overlooking other issues. If this issue is about the lack of public seating due to loitering, maintenance issues, has Santa Barbara considered other options besides little or no seating? Santa Barbara could consider providing more outdoor public seating while expanding the ambassador program to monitor public spaces, keeping them clean, secure, and safe for all people to enjoy. Ventura's ambassador program provides its citizens with part-time trained paid employees on bikes who are part security, part social worker, and part tourism. They help keep public space clean, safe, and enjoyable for all people to enjoy. And maybe SB could consider a similar program to Ventura's so that we could have public seating that is for all and to enjoy our beautiful space that we live in peace. And I understand that the Santa Barbara Public Safety receives 45% of our revenues. So please consider using some of this towards more seating and expansion of the SB Ambassador Program, which I understand is volunteer only, but maybe I'm wrong about that, to get closer to maybe Ventura's program. Thanks for your service to our community. And please let me know who I could follow up with on this issue since I didn't get very far with Parks and Recreation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. John Thomas?
Mayor Randy, I miss your restaurant so much, just so you know. I loved that restaurant, my favorite restaurant in Santa Barbara, and now it's gone. History always repeats itself, and when COVID hit, the Plaza Veracruz was closed, it said on the sign, for 3 months. 3 years later, the park was still closed. There's a now, it was known as Needles Park. Nobody knew what Veracruz was. But my dog park is closed, and they have a sign again. I'm getting no cooperation at all from Park and Recreation, none. They don't return phone calls, blah, blah, blah. But that's how, I'm a poor retired veteran. And I live at the Garden Street Apartments, and I make a living walking people's dogs. And there's this 1/3 of Plaza Veracruz was turned over into a public park. I've asked Lisa Moeller to write a letter to the Independent because she got that park opened again. She fought back and forth to be able to get that park. I really need that little park opened. It's a park. What does the maintenance have to be in there? You know, the trapeze school is next to it. There's a fence. You know, there's a little kid school that's no longer there anymore. That's connected. It's the Coda, that cute little school, the Kiwani school thing for the kids, it's gone. And then there's a little park, is my dog park, and it's locked. And so I can walk 7 dogs in there because we can close the gate and the dogs can run around free in there. So whatever you can do to help me get that dog park, I would like to set up an appointment in your District 1. Yes, ma'am? Okay. Congratulations on being in there. So I think I'm done talking. I just need help getting the dog park open. And sorry for my entrance earlier.
Thank you. Faiza Dean?
Hi, my name is Faiza Dean. I'm in District 3. I want to announce today that I want to run for City Council District 6. I have a plan to relocate. I want to talk about, I want to shift the focus to my accounting strength and the declaration. First of all, I'm an American descendant of slavery and came before the city with nothing while they have it all. While you have it all, okay? My family is from Tinsall Parish, Louisiana, where at one point 90% of the descendants of slavery were there. We paid for the sovereignty of America with the backs of our labor and blood. I'm not your ordinary person. My father is an icon of Louisiana. Thomas Jefferson, the bonds for our sovereignty, government bonds, were paid by my descendants of slavery. My father, he is a French chef from Louisiana. He is an icon and legacy of history. I have much to give and to benefit Santa Barbara. We were the labor that built the wealth of this continent. When the British accepted government bonds for the sovereignty of what is now America, those bonds were based on the high value of my ancestors. My family paid for America, and they paid for the purchase of themselves. The lineage fought to expand and save the Union and the civil rights. The Mexican-American War was won with our help, and a mulatto Mexican governor led this land before my ancestors helped win California. To honor our fight, because this is the only home we have, our owner, America, wrote the 14th Amendment to incorporate American descendants of slavery into the United States and for all the state to follow. Each and every adios is a corporation. Today, a corporation under law is a person, an entity, and cannot represent itself. However, American descendants of slavery can represent themselves. We are the first corporation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have speakers online?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We have Stephen Leonard. Stephen Leonard, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great, thank you. My name is Steve Leonard. I'm an associate attorney with Angel Law, speaking regarding issues we have with the proposed short-term rental ordinances contemplated earlier today by the Ordinance Committee, which might come before you in the coming weeks. These ordinances would eliminate hundreds of short-term rentals, which is an extreme effect that should not be taken lightly. And should these ordinances come before the City Council, we urge you not to accept them as currently written until they can be rewritten and brought into compliance with CEQA, with the city's land use plan, and with the property rights of the people of Santa Barbara. First, the exemption violates CEQA. The staff report prepared for the Ordinance Committee says the ordinances should be exempted from CEQA, meaning that it wouldn't have to go through any more environmental review. The staff report bases this finding on CEQA guidelines section 15061B3, which applies where it can be seen with certainty that there is no possibility that the activity in question may have a significant effect on the environment. But the staff report contains no evidence to support such certainty, despite the seismic shift in the city's accommodations patterns that the ordinances will cause. The project doesn't need to be a big construction site to have environmental impacts. By suddenly eliminating hundreds of STRs, these ordinances risk simply pushing visitors to Santa Barbara out to accommodations outside the city, and the farther you push visitors, the longer they have to drive to get into the city, increasing their air pollutant and greenhouse gas emissions. So we're saying that an initial study is appropriate and necessary to meet CEQA's goals of careful deliberation and public disclosure. Second, adoption of the ordinance as written is inconsistent with the city's own land use plan, which explicitly requires the preservation of lower cost visitor accommodations like short-term rentals. By banning a vast swath of STRs, these ordinances make overnight accommodations both rarer and more expensive. So in other words, they turn access to the Santa Barbara coast into a luxury for the wealthy rather than something within the reach of regular Californians. So we urge a more moderate approach than the sweeping prohibitions in these ordinances. And finally, these ordinances, if adopted as written, also implicate constitutional issues threatening the property rights of the people of Santa Barbara. For example, the non-conforming use provisions in each of the ordinances are under-inclusive in that they fail to protect the rights of STR hosts who currently operate legal STRs but who haven't had to get a permit. For example, coastal zone STRs in city residential zones A, E, R1, and R2, which are protected by the cracking injunction, and STRs in non-residential zones where hotels and similar uses are currently allowed. And for these reasons, we urge you not to adopt these ordinances should they come before you in the coming weeks. That's all. Thank you very much.
All right, very good. Are there further speakers online, Madam Clerk, for general public comment?
No further speakers for general public comment, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
and with that, we'll close general public comment. We'll move to the poll consent items. The first one is item 3, which has been read into the record. And Ms. Snedden, you had a comment and/or question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rouse. So for item 3, and I mentioned this before, but I'll just keep making the comment. I'm not sure where in the process, but I do believe, hearing from residents in extreme high fire and high fire areas, that they would be willing to assess themselves at a higher rate if that would be going more toward doubling investments from neighborhood groups or from other groups that are also investing in areas. So I'm not sure at what point that might be considered, but I do want to mention it here at this item.
Very good.
Sure, I'll just comment, our fire chief and fire marshal here. Significant increases above what the assessment district already has built in as a cost of living would require a new vote for the district, and I think would require a substantial outreach process. I think we are, I think there's some other work flows that are in the process around the fire facilities assessment and some other sort of needs assessment for the fire department. And I think we are all wanting to kind of wait till that process plays out to see whether, this is an appropriate funding mechanism to fund some of those improvements, or if we should be identifying others as well. And so absolutely hear the comment and are willing to explore it. I just want to make sure that we're doing it with an eye towards the longer term fire facility needs and staffing needs as well.
Okay, and where should I direct residents who specifically want to move that forward?
You can send them to myself and the fire chief,
Okay.
and that we're happy to keep track of those and talk with them further.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, very good. And with that, we'll move to item 4. You had that poll as well, Ms. Sneddon. We also have some public speakers, so,
I'll wait till after the public comment.
okay, very good. We'll begin with Stephanie Diaz. Ms. Diaz, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Diaz. I'm with the Land Trust for Santa Barbara County, and good afternoon. We are really pleased to see that the city has prepared a resolution in support of biodiversity, and it's something that the Land Trust has at a core value for them. And over the years, we have about 40 years worth of work and almost 60,000 acres of conserved land. And part of what our conservation is about is keeping biodiversity. And the health of our entire region, as well as the special ecosystems that we have, is threatened by the loss of general ecosystem species that we have, the flora and the fauna. And this happens because many times there's inappropriate development or water is moved from the area, it's not available. And we understand that protecting biodiversity is a long-term commitment, and that's why we feel that your resolution speaks publicly to your commitment to that long-term. And I think I'd finally like to say that the biodiversity is not just for plants and animals. It also helps the watershed, it helps soil, it helps agriculture. So it has a more full community service. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the threesome of Helene Schneider, Sigurd Wright, and Steve Winhager. A little unfair ganging up on us like that, but go right ahead.
We come in peace. You get all of us for 3 minutes instead of 9, right? So
That's not, you know better than
I
that.
know, that's all good. Mayor Rouse, members of the City Council, Helene Schneider, I have the honor and privilege of serving as chair of the Board of Directors at the Board of Trustees at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. I want to acknowledge Sigrid Wright, Executive Director of Community Environmental Council, and then on staff at the Botanic Garden, Steve Winhanger, our Executive Director, and Eric Cardenas is right over there, our Director of Impact and Advocacy. And just to thank you for supporting this biodiversity resolution. You are the first in the county to get on the agenda. We are going to other cities in the county and to the county itself who will also be looking at this resolution as well. The Botanic Garden and Community Environmental Council co-chair
this regional collaborative. We just heard from Land Trust. There are 40 organizations in the region who have signed on to this process. The representatives meet quarterly to discuss pressing issues involving local biodiversity and who've created a shared vision and policy platform, which I believe you have copies of in support of biodiversity on the Central Coast. And our vision is to support new and strengthen current systems that will reduce the impacts of climate change, support economic well-being, improve habitat and ecosystem functions, and increase the biodiversity in areas most impacted by society and development. We encourage you to use this resolution when considering future actions in city planning and zoning, development decisions. Could be as simple as adding native plants to a landscape design, to something more complex in your long-term planning or dealing with fire resiliency or climate action here. So I'll turn it over to Sigrid Wright.
Well, Helene said it all. What I want to really call out is that State of the City last week. I was just so impressed. I've long been impressed with the city's history when it comes to taking the lead on promoting sustainability, but I'm also really impressed with your ability to partner. And so as you just mentioned, as you just heard, CEC, the Botanic Gardens, and 40-plus organizations as part of the Biodiversity Working Group, we're here to help you. We're here to partner with you. To do things that all of us are really concerned about: improving water quality, reducing water demand, improving soil health, and, as you've heard here today, building resilience against wildfires. So we do hope that you will reach out to us in other ways that we can collaborate. And thank you. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Madam Mayor et al. Do we have any speakers online, Madam Clerk, on this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We have Lori Gaskin, and then Joseph Miller and Nancy Avos have raised their hands. When I call on Joseph and Nancy,
We need to find out what item
we'll
they're
find
there
out
to
when
speak to, if
exactly.
you may, please.
But I believe
So,
Lori Gaskin is for this
Ms.
item.
Gaskin.
So go ahead, Lori Gaskin.
Thank you so very much. My name is Lori Gaskin, and I have the honor and privilege of serving on the city's Creek Advisory Committee, as well as I chair the Conservation Science Committee for the Santa Barbara Audubon Society. And I am here, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, to thank you so very much for this resolution, protecting biodiversity and supporting restoration. We have, as we all know, when we go out and we enjoy this extraordinary habitat that we have the privilege of living within, we have such a diverse landscape from our mountains and foothills through our riparian corridors, coastal plains, to the coastal zone itself, including the very special and unique Goleta Slough, over which the city of Santa Barbara has stewardship. And for all of those diverse and special and extraordinary ecosystems, when you commit to, in those 5 bullet points, fostering and advancing biodiversity protection and restoration, you are in turn protecting birds and bird habitat. And for that, Santa Barbara Audubon Society is extremely grateful, and we simply encourage further embracing of the progressive approach you take to habitat protection and habitat restoration in the name of this generation and future generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there further speakers online for item 4?
Next, we have Joseph Miller. Joseph Miller, if you wish, can you let us know what item you wish to speak on? And if it is item 4, please go ahead and speak.
Hi, everyone. I just had a general comment. I'm not sure what item it was for, and I'm sorry if I signed
Yeah,
it incorrectly.
we've closed general comment. We'll have, we can reopen it at the end of the meeting, but we've closed the general comment for now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'll get it at next meeting then.
Okay,
I
thank you.
appreciate everyone. Thank you.
Next is Nancy Avos. Nancy Avos, please go ahead and let us know what item, and if it is item 4, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and honorable City Council members. I am speaking on item 4. Thank you. My name is Nancy Avos, and I'm the Assistant Director with SB Can. You guys have heard of from us multiple times. The Santa Barbara County Action Network is a part of a collaborative group meeting quarterly to protect our local biodiversity. And we are very, very proud that the City of Santa Barbara has taken this step, affirming the benefits that biodiversity brings to this region. We urge you to integrate biodiversity considerations into planning, zoning, and development decisions moving forward. These continue to support wildfire resilience, agricultural landscapes, and overall regional conservation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give public input.
Thank you. Are there further speakers online for that item?
Our last raised hand is Mark Chitilo. Mark Chitilo, if you wish to speak on item 4, please go ahead. If not, please let us know which item.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, members of the council. I'm Mark Chitilo. I wanted to just offer my support for this item and appreciation for all the prior speakers. They said pretty much everything that needed to be said. This is a really important gesture and substantive action supporting both biodiversity and restoration of our habitat. And to have that include all city lands, both lands that are within the city and those that are outside of the city but owned by the city, is particularly important. So thank you, and I hope that you will endorse and adopt this measure.
Thank you. And with that, Ms. Sneddon, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I'm really grateful for this resolution and just highlighting, as we heard, the importance of biodiversity. It's not just soil enrichment and water infiltration and air purification, but as was mentioned, resilience, fire, food resources, against illness, against climate change. And this came to our Sustainability Council Committee and was fully embraced, and it comes forward with the full support of the Council Committee as well. And I'm congratulating the Botanic Gardens on your 100 years and going to one of those events, and something that was really impactful was mentioning that the redwoods that we see now, these huge majestic trees were planted by the careful planting 100 years ago, and then the Torrey pines that you're planting now with just the little sprigs there are planting for the next 100 years, and that generations, we won't see them at that majesty, but future generations. And it was really powerful planning on that. And so I think also this ties into the ecological framework that the CEC has been championing, and that Sustainability Committee also is bringing forward, and really appreciating how, again, in partnership with the bringing this forward from Botanic Gardens, and the support with that too, with planting on State Street, and then bringing things forward to Sustainability Committee, and then here, and just appreciation for all that this item really is significant. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll move to item 6, which has been read in the record. Oh, comment by Mr. Freeman. Are you jumping in on this?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really, just wanted to express appreciation to the Botanic Garden in particular for leading this effort. I know Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Winhager put a lot of work in this with our sustainability department, and the chair of your board, former Mayor Schneider, so it kind of ties into the city. And it's a real honor for all of us up here to be the first in the county to adopt this and move this forward. The city of Santa Barbara has a long history of environmental protection and also environmental policy forward thinking. This is very forward thinking, considering that we are in a biological diversity hotspot, and yet the diversity is threatened here and worldwide. So this is an opportunity for education, but also reversing that trend. And to have 40 partners, it's a public-private partnership, because government alone is not going to be able to make the changes that we need. So it's great to see the CEC, Land Trust here today, as well as the other comments. So thank you all for showing up, being a part of this, and look forward to implementing this in the weeks and months and years ahead.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now with that, we'll move on to item 6, which has been read into the record, and we have a public speaker on that, Lanny Ebenstein.
Mayor Rouse, members of the council, thank you for your service to our community. I'm speaking on behalf of the Coalition to Preserve Mission Canyon today. We were most recently involved with city issues several years ago on bridge issues, and the city had accepted a grant for some millions of dollars from the state of California. This is a Cliff Notes version and was moving toward demolition of the existing Mission Creek Bridge and building a new bridge using some materials from the previous one. And the coalition organized and broad-based, bipartisan, nonpartisan, people with very different perspectives on many issues, but united in the view that that wasn't a good idea. And ultimately, after a 7-year effort, all of the members of the council, including all of the members of the council now who are on the council at that time, voted for at least one of the resolutions to detract that project, and 2 of the members of the council, Councilmember Friedman and Councilmember Harmon, voted for both of the motions that would detract that project, and we continue to have the Mission Creek Bridge today. And I've thought several times since then that if that project had gone through, what would the impact be on the proposed 8-story development next to the Santa Barbara Mission? It was a very important vote, and thank you for it. So we're supportive of conceptual design contracts for pedestrian pathways and for watershed fish passage improvement plans. We've always been in favor of them. And our goal has always been that discussions are open, honest, conceptual, preliminary. There aren't decisions made. It's not brought back, well, we put so much money and effort into it, this is what we've got to do in terms of, and so I wanted to speak on members of the coalition. We'll certainly be becoming more active in the coming weeks and months to monitor and become involved in these issues. It's very important to the city. It's very important to the entire region. It's a very important area, both naturally and also in terms of its long development. The coalition also supported more recently the designation in the county of Rocky Nook Park as a county historic landmark. So in any event, we're just here to let you know that we continue to be involved, and we'll be involved on this issue, and we take you at your word that these are conceptual design contracts and that there'll be lots of opportunity for community participation as the process develops. Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you. Ms. Schneid.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So that was going to be my question for the public, so we could let people know that this is just for a footpath, not for a bridge demolition, and what the timeline is, and what are the points of engagement for the public.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. And I think there's maybe one more public speaker online potentially for this item, so maybe we'll let that person speak, and then we're happy to respond to it.
Thank you. Yes, very. Mark Chitello, did you wish to speak on item 6 as well?
Yes, Madam Clerk, thank you. Mark Chatillo speaking on this item on behalf of the organization Friends of Mission Canyon. We've been actively involved in creek protection issues and restoration, as well as circulation issues. And I wanted to offer the Friends support for this action and a lot of appreciation for staff in bringing this forward. The primary interest that we have is around fish passage. Mission Creek is unfortunately, it's an important steelhead and part of the biological constituency and DNA of our city. But it's also the creek itself. Mission Creek is not providing anything near the potential that it could for fish and for biological resources. Removing the fish barriers, that is the barriers to fish migration, including the one that's right under the Mission Canyon Road Bridge that does implicate pedestrian circulation in that area, is a sore spot, and it's one that definitely needs to be addressed, and kudos to staff for identifying that and bringing it forward, and I hope that your council will support this. We need actions to both remove the barriers to fish passage and also take actions to remediate the city's adverse impacts to fish flows in Mission Creek. in order to restore this habitat and this watershed to the way it should be. So support for this action, and we very much appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Sneddon. I just wanted to say a couple prefacing comments, and then I wanted to ask our Sustainability and Resilience Director, Alelia Parento, to come up and speak. I recognize the long and complicated history of this bridge, the community input, and the concerns that have gone on around the design of this bridge and alternate pedestrian and bike passage through the area, along with the sustainability issues. Last year in the CIP, I believe it was last year in the CIP budget, the council added back in some preliminary design dollars for this project. At that time, I basically asked our sustainability department to take over leadership of this project. It will no longer be run by the transportation division, which it had been previously, and to embark on a new design process that is very community engaged and really sort of brings all of the stakeholders together. This contract is simply the first step in a very extensive process. And so I'm going to let Ms. Parento speak to what the next steps are from this contract award.
Parento?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Yes, Ms. McAdoo is absolutely right. We're just kicking off the process. In August of 2021, your council did vote to move forward on conceptual pedestrian pathway designs. And when we took over the project last year, we started looking at all of the constraints that are in the area, both upstream and downstream, and wanted to have some factual options before re-engaging the community so that we could start from a place of feasibility. So that's where we are today. We'll be entering into this contract to get some concepts to then engage with the community on which sightings are better, which trade-offs are worth it. And so we do anticipate a very robust community engagement process from that point, and will not make any decisions or bring anything forward to council without that input.
Ms. Sneddon?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, with that, is anybody online? That was it for the online one. Okay, we got all this. So we need to go back and approve, or make a motion to approve items 3, 4, and 6.
So, second.
Moved, Sneddon, second by Friedman. May we have the vote, please?
This is a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Friedman, for items 3, 4, and 6 on the consent calendar for the recommended actions. Please go ahead and vote.
Those are approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And we will move on then to item, where are we? Item 8, yes.
Yes. Item 8, Community Development and Human Services Committee Funding Recommendations and Fiscal Year 2027 Action Plan Public Hearing.
And Mayor, I just wanted to take a moment before our staff kick this off. I think this may be the first presentation that our new Housing and Homelessness Services Manager, Carrie Payne, is making before the council. So I wanted to acknowledge her addition to the city staff team and welcome her and thank her for her leadership of this really important, critical program within the city organization. So with that, I will turn it over to her.
Very good. We're usually pretty tough on first appearances, so good luck.
Oh, dear. Well, it is a great honor to be here, and thank you for that introduction, Ms. McAdoo. I am excited to share the hard work that not only the Office of Housing and Community Vitality has been up to, but also our Community Development and Human Services Committee, because we have some very dedicated volunteers that spend every week in February working to make sure that this project moves forward and that we are able to leverage some really important federal funding and help support our community. So here we go. This is our basic presentation that goes through the recommendations and the action plan for the upcoming fiscal year. So we have a 4-part recommendation today. 1, to approve the fiscal year funding based on the recommendations of the Community Development and Human Services Committee for use of community development block funds, as well as approve an amendment to the fiscal year 2026 Human Services and Public Service grants to renew a second year of grant funding for fiscal year 2027. We also recommend to authorize Deputy City Administrator to execute such agreements, amendments, and related documents, subject to approval as to form by the City Attorney, and conduct a public hearing to obtain input on the city's annual action plan for program year 2026 through 2027. So a little bit of background about the CDBG program. So these are federal funds that we receive annually for the purpose of providing decent housing, create suitable living environments, and create economic opportunities. The City Council also allocates general funds to further supplement what we're able to do with the CDBG dollars and provide human service grants to a variety of nonprofits supporting these goals. A little bit of background. CDBG funds are awarded annually to efficiently address community infrastructure needs. 4 projects were recommended in fiscal year 2027. So a majority of the CDBG funds go towards capital campaigns, infrastructure and development, and a minority of those funds are allocated to the public service grants. So in this cycle, we reviewed 4 of these recommended capital campaign projects. Since fiscal year 2023, human service grants have been awarded biannually in 2-year grant cycles. So on March 18th of last year, the council approved 41 grants for fiscal years 26 and 22nd. So we are looking for a recommendation to continue on with that funding. Here's the breakdown of the funding that we have available this year. So we get an annual entitlement. That's that blue section, $841,577. We also have the annual allocation that is from the council in terms of the general service funds, which is the $726,150. We have our CDBG reprogrammed funds. So in last year, projects came in under budget, so $12,975, and we have a little bit of program income or repayments, which is the $60,000. The CDBG program is through HUD, and they establish funding priorities. So homeless assistance, community development, needs and services, decent housing availability, public facilities and infrastructure, and economic development. We also establish funding priorities for the public and human service grants. So the first funding priority being programs that help meet basic human needs, specifically food, shelter, housing, medical, physical, and mental. And second, proposals that reduce the impact of violence, including prevention of gun violence and suicide and/or prevention in nature and/or promote the highest degree of functioning the individual is capable of achieving. The funding process for capital grants goes through a standard process. We provide notices to interested parties. We do an advertisement. There's a press release, including a Spanish language option. It's posted on the city website and through social media. We host a mandatory applicant workshop and then provide staff Q&A. The funding process after applications have come in, we go through a standard process. 4 capital applications were received this year. None of those were economic development proposals. We received 2 proposals that are focused on preservation of important housing stock through the nonprofits in our community who provide housing to very low-income individuals. We received 1 that is about preservation of housing stock for low-income homeowners. And we also received an application to complete the vision for Plaza Veracruz and the development that's happening in that park. The CDHSC is the committee that reviews these applications and makes the funding recommendations. This is a 13-member board, represents board interests from a variety of community interests, including low and moderate income neighborhoods, and the role is to review the proposals, recommend the grants, and monitor existing grantees. The development of the recommendations this year was done by the CDHSC in February. They reviewed the applicants, they interviewed the applicants. Each applicant came to the committee and presented their proposal. The applicants were scored by the committee members. The committee members also conducted site visits throughout the year of the current grantees and reported back at the committee meetings, and the final funding recommendations were formulated and approved by the committee. Capital grant recommendations, which were the ones that we were focusing on this year, came in. All applicants were recommended for full funding, which was really awesome that we had enough funding to go around, and everybody got what they asked for. Recommendations met CDBG goals to provide decent and affordable housing and infrastructure improvements for public facilities. There was a contingency plan that was developed. However, we did receive our funding allocation from HUD before this action plan and recommendation report were created, so there's no need for a contingency plan. The recommendation report has been included in the packet. It's also published on our website, and it has a detail of each grant in the funding cycle, including what the funds will be used for and the amounts of each grant. This also includes the second year human service, public service grants. The annual action plan is a mandate of HUD. It's a component of our 5-year consolidated plan. And so each year we report on the updates to that plan, progress, and the recommendations that we have for the year ahead. The difference between the action plan and the recommendation report is largely that the recommendation report includes those human service grants that we provide as a city that are in addition to the CDBG HUD-funded programs. The annual action plan process, today is a public hearing. We will have a 30-day review process that starts April 15th, so tomorrow, and will end May 17th. You can access our action plan online, and we will have final approval May 19th of that action plan, which will include any public comments that we get in that open 30-day period. The next steps will be to submit the action plan to HUD for final approval, execute the agreements for the capital grants, and execute the agreements for the public service grants as well. And that is a conclusion of my presentation.
All right, very good. Are there questions from staff? Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. In the staff report, it mentioned, and this is the second year of a 2-year plan. And when we brought that forward a couple of years back, a couple of the reasoning behind that proposal was on the operational side for the nonprofits, if it would have benefits for reducing overhead, reducing time with the grants, but also allow them to recruit staffing positions for those because they have the 2-year guarantee. And then on our side, again, we're looking at the city to improve efficiencies and costs here, was reducing having to review those grants every year and put that out. So has there been a positive feedback in terms of both of those goals that came from the proposal 2 years ago?
I have not received specific feedback about the efficiency. However, I imagine that it is a decreased burden for our nonprofit partners. I do know that they're very grateful for the grants, even though they're not a large part of their operating budget. They make a huge impact. And so I did hear that from each one of our grantees during this cycle. Not only the impact financially to the organization, but also in leveraging our funding and approval of their programs into additional funding. So actually being able to leverage these small grants into increased funding for their organization. So
And then having the 2 years probably helps them additionally as well.
I am very confident that it helps them with the administrative burden.
All right, thank you. I'd just like to check in that change because those were the intended, part of the intended package of reforms that we put in a couple years back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions of staff? Okay. Do we have any public speakers online for this?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. Back to council for comments and deliberation. Ms. Snedden.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I just, as liaison to the committee, I just really want to reiterate what a dedicated committee that is. It's very intense work over a short period of time, and they're delegating work to each other, and then there were staffing changes in that time, and then they were training each other on what the rules were, and it's really impressive how much they care and how much they dedicate to this endeavor. It was a good year. I have heard from applicants, and there were some comments on that they appreciated the 2-year cycle. And then there was, it was such a quiet year this year, really, with smaller projects, but for more funding. And I wanted to ask you, there was some unexpended funds or some, the full amount wasn't applied for. And I just want to make sure it's not use it or lose it, or if you could just speak to that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. We, with the staffing changes, and there was kind of an unusual request in that an applicant asked for a large amount of funding, and then in the process between the time in which they applied and the time in which they came for an interview in February, had gotten more information about their project and actually had a much lower bid. And so it threw us through some hoops, and in the end, what the committee's recommendation was, because that lower bid was so significantly lower, was to have that money go as a not to exceed amount for that grantee. So they will have a cushion if they get, in this process, when the capital campaigns go to complete the work, because the work isn't done for many months after they actually get the award in February, March, they have to go through a bidding process. And so those bids don't always match exactly the initial bids for a variety of reasons. And so providing them with that cushion, I think, will be really valuable in ensuring that they're able to complete that work. Any funds that are left over, we do have the ability to allocate to other projects that go over budget or use as reprogram funds for the following year. So we will not lose it if we don't use it.
Thank you. And I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, very good. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second by Friedman. Any further discussion? May we have the vote, please, Madam Clerk?
Yes, this is a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Friedman, for the recommended actions for item 8. Please go ahead and vote.
It passed unanimously. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you all so much.
All right, we will move on to the next item, item 9.
Very good. Item 9, single-family streamlining project ordinance amendments, ordinance introduction resolution. Sorry, I have to read a little bit here. Recommendation that Council A introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending the Santa Barbara Municipal Code by amending chapters 30.01, 30.15, 30.20, 30.25, 30.30, 30.35, 30.140, 30.165, 30.175, 30.185, 30.200, 30.205, 30.220, 30.235, 30.250, 30.290, 30.295, 30.300, and Section 30.150.090 of Chapter 30.150 of Title 30 pertaining to regulations for single-family streamlining. B, introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending the Santa Barbara Municipal Code by amending Chapter 25.03 of Title 25 pertaining to regulations for single-family streamlining project. C, introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending the Santa Barbara Municipal Code by adding Chapter 22.22 and amending Chapters 22.68 and 22.69 of Title 22 pertaining to regulations for single-family streamlining project. And D, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending the Single-Family Design Board guidelines.
Very good. Ms. Kukinda.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. I'm Ted Hamilton Roll, Design Review Supervisor. Joining me is City Planner Ellen Kukinda. I also want to acknowledge Brenda Beltz, our planning analyst, and Allison DeBusk, our community development director, and take a second to acknowledge and recognize them for their contributions to this project. It's been a lot of work, and they've done a whole lot of good things for it. We're here on the Ordinance Committee's recommendation to request your consideration of the ordinance amendments associated with the single-family streamlining project. As you may recall, this project was initiated in 2022 as a result of community feedback and land development team oversight subcommittee direction. We presented a conceptual level briefing to council of our proposed ordinance amendments in June of last year. This project implements much needed changes to the city's design review process for single family development, streamlining and simplifying what is currently an overburdened process. Council supported the direction on the proposed amendments. This project has been in progress for more than 3 years and has been thoroughly vetted by the public, the SFDB, the Planning Commission, and City Council. In early 2023, staff analyzed 3 years' worth of SFDB project data, did public outreach focused on SFDB stakeholders, including homeowners, architects, designers, planning consultants, American Institute of Architects, advocates, and current and former SFDB members. In 2024, based on this targeted outreach, staff began developing the ordinance and guidelines updates and presented those concepts to the Single Family Design Board and Planning Commission. Then in 2025, we held additional SFDB and Planning Commission discussions and did outreach to neighbors and the Realtors Association, and then held a briefing session at City Council. We held an additional introductory session with Planning Commission in December 2025, and in January 8th of this year, the Planning Commission recommended that the amendments be forwarded to City Council. Ordinance Committee unanimously recommended the proposed amendments on March 17th, and we are here today for your consideration of our recommendation to introduce and adopt the amendments. The project goals are the same as presented to City Council in June 2025. 1, to reduce the number of single-family development projects subject to design review. 2, to streamline the public hearing process for single-family projects. And 3, to create more flexibility to address common homeowner interests. Key project actions include updating the SFDB code and guidelines and incorporating complementary amendments to the zoning ordinance to ease up on restrictions and give homeowners more flexibility. I'll now walk you through how we're addressing each of these goals. Again, the first goal is to reduce the number of projects subject to design review. And the primary change we're proposing to achieve this goal is to exempt alterations from design review if they don't result in new floor area and either visually match the existing development or result in a new cohesive design. Here's an example of how we would apply this approach and what we mean by exempting alterations from design review. In the SFDB approved project shown on this slide, the existing mid-century home in the top image needed a new roof, windows, and plaster. And under current code, this project required consent review at SFDB just due to the number and extent of the changes proposed. However, under the proposed code, this project would not require a public hearing since it only involves exterior alterations and the resulting design is cohesive and consistent with the SFDB guidelines. And the proposed and approved design is on the bottom. Along with reducing the design review triggers, we propose to increase administrative approvals of minor projects, part of a comprehensive update to the SFDB guidelines, which is part of your packet. We're doing a general reorganization and reformat to enhance readability, enhance accessibility, simplifying and consolidating the long list of SFDB's goals, and adding enhanced process guidance, including the addition of substantial conformance criteria. And also to help streamline the process, we plan to expand the guidelines criteria for administrative staff level approvals of minor projects. Here's an example of a project that would qualify for administrative approval under the new code. It's this red hatched addition that's in the back of the house. You can see the street up here at the front. This is a one-story, it's over 500 square feet addition, and it required consent just because it's over that 500 square foot threshold. And by allowing admin approval of up to 800 square feet in our proposed guidelines, this would give us more flexibility to approve projects like this that are obviously consistent with the SFDB guidelines and don't alter the front facade, result in a cohesive style, and are located in consideration of neighbors. This would allow more streamlined permits for projects like adding a bedroom addition at the rear of the house. And for comparison, here's an example of an addition that wouldn't necessarily be eligible for admin approval with the new standards. Even though the addition shown here is small and one story and meets most of the criteria, it's this little bump out in the front here, it doesn't meet one of the criteria, which is that additions can't significantly alter the front facade and still qualify for admin approval. So it's important to keep in mind that just because we receive an admin approval request, we don't have to approve it administratively, and we regularly refer admin approval requests to consent or full board if they don't meet the criteria in the guidelines. If these amendments are proposed, we anticipate at least 24% of SFDB projects will no longer require design review. This is a conservative estimate of the total number of projects that would be reduced, the bare minimum we can expect to be eliminated. The actual reduction in projects might be higher. And note that there is actually little change to the share of projects reviewed at full board, demonstrating that we are not proposing changes that would remove the most significant projects like new two-story houses and large additions from SFDB purview. What this means in terms of the actual number of projects and agenda items is that of the average of 221 projects triggered for some level of SFDB review every year, whether it's administrative consent or full board, 54 of those projects would be entirely exempt from design review under the proposed ordinance. Consent and full board SFDB projects take an average of 2 public hearings, so if we multiply the number of consent and full board projects by 2, we get approximately 108 fewer SFDB agenda items every year. We think this is a reasonable reduction for now, as we wanted this project to take a measured approach using a scalpel, not a hatchet, so that the proposed ordinance will strike a balance between streamlining and maintaining reasonable aesthetic oversight of single-family projects. The second goal is to streamline the public hearing process by consolidating the SFDB review process from 2 approval hearings into 1, changing the requirement for mailed notices, and lowering the review level for floor area modifications. By consolidating the SFDB approval process from 2 hearings into 1, we're implementing a NOVAC report recommendation to reduce the number of appeal points. We're shining a light, emphasizing project design approval as the most important approval to appeal, and by eliminating a hearing at final approval, helping the city comply with the 5 hearing limit for housing projects set by the Housing Crisis Act. The current process requires public hearings for both project design approval in the middle and final approval on the right. Project design approval is the main approval point at SFDB and the one that counts for that state permit streamlining purpose. And final approval, despite its name that implies otherwise, is not the substantive SFDB approval, despite its name. Instead, it's only the approval of final project details and verification that those details substantially conform to project design approval. And currently, final approval is appealable by anyone who participated in the decision hearing, even though the final approval scope is narrow, limited to color and material details, and whether the project substantially conforms to project design approval. The proposed process, now shown on the screen, front-loads the review of final details to project design approval, meaning that some of the plan details currently required for final approval would now be required for project design approval, like your finish details, your color and material board, etc. So instead of going to a public hearing for final approval, applicants would be able to submit directly to Building and Safety for the building permit, and planning staff would perform their review for substantial conformance to the project design approval as part of the regular building permit plan check. If staff find that the building permit plans don't substantially conform to the project design approval or are otherwise uncomfortable making a decision, we would have the option to refer final approval to the SFDB. And those referred decisions that the Community Development Director refers to SFDB on final approval would only be appealable by the project applicant. I want to note that for the current and proposed process, you still have the option of going to a concept review where these design issues can be ironed out early on. To assist staff with making those post-approval decisions, we are introducing a process for determining substantial conformance to the approved plans in the SFDB guidelines. There are seven criteria for substantial conformance that need to be met to qualify for final approval. Minor variations to plans may be approved if they meet these criteria, and if they do not, then a revised project design approval would be required. This makes it much more clear to everyone what to do when a plan set deviates from an SFDB approval, and was something that SFDB project appellants and neighborhood representatives advocated for. Along with streamlining the final approval process, staff proposed updated findings for SFDB project design approval. We've reduced the number of findings from 7 to 5, shortened the text, and reworded them to keep their original intent while also focusing them on SFDB's purview of house size, design, and aesthetics. This is something the SFDB has requested and reiterated and will help with the clarity of their motions. And just for reference, these same findings now take up 3 slides with the same text size. We also propose cleanups to the hillside finding and grading and vegetation removals findings that focus the SFDB's review on project aesthetics and reduce the amount of text for them to read, again, helping with motion clarity. Another streamlining code amendment is to update mailed notice triggers for all design review boards. The biggest changes are 2 additions. Currently, a 500 square foot first story addition requires a mailed notice. We are proposing to increase that threshold to 800 square feet to be able to administratively approve an addition of up to 800, like we discussed earlier. This aligns with state ADU law and allows ministerial approval of that 800 square foot ADU. This aligns with state ADU law that allows ministerial approval of an 800 square foot ADU without any design review. And also similarly with second story additions, we propose to increase the mail notice threshold from 150 square feet to 250 square feet. This would allow staff to administratively approve a small bedroom addition to an existing second story, something that the current code and guidelines do not allow. And I want to emphasize that new second stories would still require a mailed notice when you're going from 1 story to 2 or more. We also propose to change the eligibility requirements to appeal HLC and ABR final approvals. As with final approval decisions made by SFDB, the proposed amendments would make ABR and HLC final approval appealable only by the project applicant. Again, this facilitates the city's compliance with the Housing Crisis Act 5-hearing limit for housing projects. Lastly, for design review ordinance amendments is a widely supported streamlining action. Currently, the process to approve or deny a single-family project exceeding the allowable floor area, also known as an FAR modification, is done in 3 steps. First, a required concept review at design review. Second, the formal decision at the Planning Commission. And third, back to design review for project design approval and final approval. The proposed process combines these 3 steps into one, making the design review body the decision maker, which stakeholders indicated was preferable, as the FAR findings really have more to do with aesthetics than with land use. And I want to note the appeal of SFDB and HLC FAR design waivers would be heard at Planning Commission. Goal 3 is to implement zoning amendments that help streamline home improvement projects and address common homeowner interests. Our primary approach to achieve this goal and to reduce the number of automatic design review triggers is to create design standards from existing design guidelines. Applicants can either design to these standards and be exempt from discretionary design review or request an exception reviewed at SFDB. This allows the community to maintain aesthetic oversight even with state mandates to reduce design review. One such guideline turned standard is that upper story decks, like this one shown in the image, should be 15 feet away from the property line. For fences and site walls, the maximum height is per the zoning code, and the code now specifies allowed materials, including wood, black or green painted metal, masonry, or stucco. Disallowed materials include chicken wire, vinyl, unfinished CMU block, and chain link. And these materials are based on those listed in the current SFDB guidelines. And again, exceptions to these new standards can be requested at design review. To address privacy concerns voiced by members of the public, we propose to add standards for upper story windows within 15 feet of an interior lot line. They can either use a minimum sill height of 42 inches or be oriented toward the front or the rear. Like you see, a lot of windows on this house are oriented toward the front. This prevents large floor-to-ceiling openings looking directly at neighbors. This is another example of an existing guideline turned into a standard, and the single-family residence design guidelines encourage those upper story openings to be placed on the front facade. The SFDB guidelines also promote the use of front porches. To facilitate homeowners building front porches, we are proposing to remove the automatic design review trigger for them and replace it with design standards. To allow maximum flexibility, and as a result of public comment received at Ordinance Committee on March 17th, A new front porch can encroach up to 10 feet into the front setback as long as it's at least 5 feet from the property line, and it can either be 16 feet wide by 10 feet deep, or if it's wider than 16 feet, it can be up to the width of the building with a reduced depth of 6 feet. In addition to front porches, fences and hedges can really alter the streetscape and have a big impact on neighborhoods. Initially, we had planned to exempt all minor zoning exceptions from SFDB review. However, we recognize that overheight fences, walls, and hedges, as shown in this image with these fences, can significantly affect the streetscape and can present conflicts between neighbors with shared property lines. Therefore, we're keeping the process the same for them with a public hearing and a mailed notice. We're proposing a new process for the more commonly rubber-stamped MZEs, including building height increases in the setback, trash enclosures in the front yard, and new and expanded openings and setbacks. Those would now be reviewed administratively, using code standards based on existing findings. And I want to just clarify this image here. On the right, this fence is what the guidelines encourage, something that's relatively short that allows you to see the house. It discourages these tall fences that really cover the beautiful houses that the SFDB works on approving from the street. We are proposing minor changes to the height regulations for fences and hedges illustrated in this table in the red text. And for front yard fences, the max height is decreasing from 8 feet to 5 feet, but you can still request a minor zoning exception to go up to 12 feet. This might seem more strict at first glance, but this allowed us to eliminate the design review trigger for front yard fences over 3.5 feet tall. So instead of this automatic trigger, we're now allowing up to a 5-foot tall fence in the front yard as long as it meets objective design standards and material specs aligning with current guidelines. These next few concepts for inland zoning won't apply in the coastal zone. They are aimed at providing homeowners more flexibility in how they develop their property. The main change we're proposing is to remove the requirement that parking spaces for single-family residences, duplexes, and condos have to be covered. This gives property owners building a new house the option to not build a garage, potentially lowering project cost and reducing project size and bulk. Note, we're not proposing to change the number of required parking spaces, only the stipulation that they must be covered. And this provides significant relief from regulations. Currently, the code often forces people into a path they don't necessarily want to take just to get an approval, and the new regulations provide some common sense alternatives. These process improvements allow more options for folks who want to use their garage or as something other than parking, but don't want to convert it to a full-fledged ADU. Currently, the code allows your garage to be either a garage, like shown on the left, or an accessory dwelling unit with a full kitchen and full bath, with no flexibility to permit it as anything in between. By removing the covered parking requirement, the proposed amendments would give people options to keep their garage as is or convert it to a storage or playroom, or a guest room, or a space that better meets their needs. They would still need a building permit to formally convert it. Along with allowing the flexibility to build or not build a garage, the proposed ordinance would allow the construction of a guest house that can be used only by the occupants of the main residence, their non-paying guests, or domestic employees. This gives folks more flexibility to build a space with a bedroom and a full bath for their guests to visit without the expense of adding a whole kitchen. Again, this is something current zoning doesn't allow. Now, initially, we proposed a detached new construction guest house size limit of 500 square feet, and Planning Commission directed us to increase the size limit to allow more living space. In January, we proposed and they accepted a 650 square foot cap. This cap still is needed so that these guest houses would not take away from the existing incentives to go ahead and build an 800 square foot ADU. We also propose easier to meet open yard requirements. There are many lots in the city between 5,000 and 6,000 square feet, and they often have a hard time meeting the required 1,250 square foot of open yard, as shown in red here, when planning an addition or accessory building. To address this, we propose to update the zoning code to reduce the open yard requirement to 800 square feet, as shown in the blue square here. And this is not to scale, it's just a rough estimate. We also propose to change the minimum dimensions from 20 by 20 feet to 20 by 15 feet. This will make it even easier for folks with smaller lots to meet the open yard requirements while still maintaining ample open space. The amendments also promote vibrant streetscapes by requiring landscaping in the front setback. Currently, there's nothing in the ordinance that would prevent a front setback from being covered over in asphalt. To address this, we propose to add a requirement that at least 50% of the area within the front setback be planted or landscaped as shown in this image here. Occasionally, there are projects that the code requires to go to the community development director or the staff hearing officer for a decision, but the project is controversial or complex enough to warrant review by a higher review authority. And the proposed code would allow the director or staff hearing officer to just refer a project to the next highest authority without holding a hearing to do so. This is key because it eliminates what's effectively a wasted hearing just for the referral, allowing the project to go straight to the next highest authority for a decision. This also helps the city comply with the state mandated limits on the number of hearings for housing projects. And lastly, for zoning ordinance updates, along with the amendments specific to single-family development, we're proposing a whole host of amendments that address new state laws, housing element updates that reduce constraints on housing development, and clarifying amendments to zoning ordinance that streamline processes and simplify code language. Before I conclude, I'll mention that this project implements 1 housing element policy and 3 programs related to streamlining and reducing constraints on housing development. I can explain further if there are questions about that. Overall, we crafted these amendments to help city staff get to yes on simple projects more quickly and efficiently while maintaining aesthetic oversight on development. This project maintains the city's objective of ensuring new development is compatible with the neighborhood and facilitating neighbor participation. It also results in a faster process, better efficiency, and achieves state requirements related to housing element and other legislative updates. Here's our recommendation, and this is an abbreviated version to what's in your packet. If you vote to adopt, the new ordinance would take effect on May 28th. Planning and building permit applications submitted before May 28th may choose to use the new or the old standards, but not both, and the cutoff for getting a building permit issued under the old standards would be December 17th of 2026. Applications submitted on or after May 28th must use the code standards, the new code standards. Our staff training and applicant support plan includes 5 staff trainings, a public webinar, a fact sheet on our website, outreach to the LDT, AIA, and staff office hours. We're also recruiting for the design review project planner, a position that would provide additional continued support with implementation. Thank you very much. That concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Very good. Council questions? Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I have 2 questions. One, can you just step us through the process, how it goes well, and then if it's going to be appealed, at what point? So it's minimizing the number of meetings, and so if you could just step through each step of that.
Thank you, Councilmember Sneddon, through the mayor. Currently, the process for single-family development projects involves essentially 3 steps at a public hearing: a concept review, project design approval, and final approval. Concept review is not appealable. It's just an initial look at a project. It's before the application has been deemed complete and has been determined to include everything that the decision maker needs to make a decision. Project design approval is the main approval point. It's where the size, bulk, scale, massing, and everything get locked in. The board is making those specific findings that are in the code, and it is an appealable action. Final approval is another appealable action currently. It's also a public hearing. This is where you have drawings that are approaching working construction drawings, including all of your structural details, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, if it's necessary on the outside, et cetera. And really the scope of review at that point is just, do the final approval plans conform with project design approval? And are there sufficient details that we can verify that the project is what the applicant says it is, essentially.
And this is where we've had issues before, where by the time it's appealed, at that point, when it gets appealed to council, the only thing that we can opine on is whether or not it complies with the final approval.
That's correct. And through the mayor to Councilmember Snedden, that we've also seen there were a number of projects where there were appeals at both project design approval and a follow-up appeal to final approval, which was an immense amount of either council time before the ordinance amendment to move single-family design board appeals to the Planning Commission. But that was kind of this, it was painful for everybody. And because by the time you get to final approval, again, the mass, bulk, and scale has already been determined, and really it's so narrow, but sometimes the issues kept coming up that really were beyond the purview that you're supposed to be looking at that final approval. So that's the current process, and a lot of this was streamlining and not requiring this. And I'll put context, Santa Barbara, we're different anyway. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of oversight over aesthetics and single-family design, and many communities don't have any design review for single-family residences. So this is kind of trying to balance, or like what Mr. Hamilton Roll will show coming up for what we're proposing to do is to try to recognize, yes, we're different. We still want to have oversight from a design review perspective, but we also can manage our process a little better and still have it be meaningful for when people participate.
Thanks for that additional context, Ms. Kakinda and Councilmember Snedden. This is the proposed process. Again, concept review is still, it's remaining the same. I will note it's optional. It's optional currently, and we're proposing to keep it optional, but most projects just like to go to concept review to get those initial comments. What our proposed process does is it really shines a light on project design approval as the main approval point. Makes it really clear to everybody that that is the key decision point at which if you're going to comment on the project, if you're going to participate in the meeting, that's the point at which to do so. And if you're going to appeal, it's the best place to do so if you're uncomfortable with a project's size or design. So we're making that the main public hearing. It's still going to be appealable to the Planning Commission, and there's going to be more final detail required at this stage than currently. So really, what this does is it tries to front load the process and put more emphasis on the concept review needing, having a good concept review, having more information up front, and then carrying it through to project design approval, which is the approval of the project. And it eliminates the confusion of final approval for SFDB and just puts that on the building permit plan check.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if I may add one other thing, this really helps streamline it for
Yes.
homeowners. It's tremendous because the architects or designers, they're already working on these details and they're prepping them for building permits. So by asking for a little bit of extra detail at project design approval, they can already jumpstart getting ready for building permits. So really trying to shrink down that process for people so that they can get through the building permit process faster. And then again, we've got some guardrails in place for the building permit review that if somebody presents new information or something that is way outside of what was approved, then they can go back to SFDB for revised approval, or again, we can look at it with our criteria so that it gives more clarity for people, for homeowners in the process of these designs.
And if it's wildly different, then the count starts over again.
Then we consider that a new project and a revised project design approval.
Okay, thank you. And then
And we, if I may also add, just for clarity, that for public participation, if a project requires a mailed notice and they choose to do concept review, a mailed notice goes out at concept review and project design approval. So there are two mailed notices that would go out when it's triggered. And so we always encourage people to start as early as possible to participate, but they can also participate at project design approval.
And then an applicant can still go through a more, discretionary process if they want to sort of not go by the objective standards.
That's correct.
And then just one more question about the, it's on slide 52. I don't know if this was, didn't see it, but it's caught my eye, the adding public scenic views definition. Could you just speak to that, adding that in and the significance of that?
Thank you, Councilmember Snedden. Through the mayor, these are actually my back pocket slides, if you had any questions. So these, just to kind of give you some more context, this series of slides has to do with responses we provided to Planning Commission after the December 2025 hearing. One of Planning Commission's requests was to add a definition for public scenic views. And the point of that, I think, was just to clarify what we mean by when we say a project doesn't detract from public scenic views of the ocean and mountains. There wasn't really a definition of that before. Adding one in helps bring clarity to that.
Thank you. And this is the one that is added in. That's okay.
That's correct.
Okay. And I'll save my comments about how much I appreciate making standards instead of guidelines, but I'll save those for after.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two questions, one on this and then a larger question for probably Ms. McAdoo. If you just quickly pull up slide 28, it has to do with hedges. I just wanted to go over that a little more. So this is one of the bigger issues in the city that comes up is the height of hedges. Sometimes neighbors get approval or they have to go through a process. There's one on Stacy Lane that has been going through the process for a couple of years now. So would these changes still allow neighbors the ability to opine? What protections do neighbors have on these issues when the hedge might be too large or impact the neighbor? And in what way would it limit their, if any, ability to participate?
Thank you, Councilmember Friedman, through the mayor. The proposed process really keeps things the same for requests for minor zoning exceptions to exceed the fence and hedge height limits. The process is that if someone is proposing a hedge that's over the, I believe it's 8-foot limit, especially, well, yeah, 8-foot limit, I think anywhere on the property, you need a minor zoning exception that requires a mailed notice and a public hearing at the Single Family Design Board. So the mailed notice would go out to a 300-foot radius, all lots within that radius, and neighbors would be able to get that and learn more about the project and come in and opine at a public hearing.
Okay, so it still protects those rights for the larger hedges.
Absolutely. And if I may, through the mayor to Councilmember Friedman, so our zoning ordinance and what this is proposed, we're showing you kind of a little part of it, but our zoning ordinance establishes what you're allowed, the fence and hedge height, what you're allowed by right, without any other special approvals. We establish what you're allowed by right. And then if you go beyond that, there's there's what you're allowed through the approval of a minor zoning exception. And that minor zoning exception, as Mr. Hamilton Rule said, it requires a mailed notice and a public hearing at the Single Family Design Board or Historic Landmarks Commission. And we did that to ensure that we would have participation because we know that fences and hedges make good neighbors, but they can also kind of really drive neighbors away from one another. So having them be part of the process is really important. That we didn't choose to make this a staff level decision. We wanted to maintain that at a public hearing. And then if you go beyond the minor zoning exception in the zoning ordinance, you can also ask for a modification, which is that's a land use approval that's done at the staff hearing officer. So in the one project that you just mentioned, they're requesting modifications because they're going beyond what's allowed by right and what's allowed through a minor zoning exception, and they're exceeding that. And the pathway to do that is through a modification.
So this wouldn't, in that example, this wouldn't affect that?
No, that process is still, the modification is still an available path to them, which would also be a public hearing and require mail noticing.
Perfect, thank you. Just my last question, and this is, I guess, more for Ms. McAdoo. So in the staff report, it mentions the Novak report. It came out in 2020. Councilmember Jordan and I have been on the Long Range Development Oversight Committee for the entire time since then. And we've slowly been going through those 31 recommendations, and we have hit the mark on a lot of them in order to simplify the process. There's still a lot of work to be done. But with this was part of that, reforms of single-family design board. Is it time, and are we in place to have a new set updated so that we can hit new metrics, we can see where we are, where the successes have been, and start challenging ourselves to look at the realities of today? Because that report came out in 2020, so the data is 2019. A lot has changed. So are we looking to do another report to help
Funny you
us?
should mention that. Ms. DeVos, do you want to talk about our next steps on, we have a cross-departmental team that has been working on a new program that we are calling Pathways to Yes, and included in that will be, I think we'll be coming back to the LDT Oversight Committee, and I'll let Ms. DeVos talk a little more about sort of what we envision that process to look like.
Thank you. Yes, so we are hoping to return to the Land Development Team Oversight Committee in June to discuss a couple things, one being this Pathways to Yes, which is still in the works. It is interdepartmental, and we're just really looking for ways to help get these projects through sticking points, which come up, and it's different for every project. But we're hoping that through this, we may find kind of commonalities that we can address to help projects get through the project, through the process. And then also at that meeting, we hope to also discuss a pilot incentive program for downtown to help incentivize housing. So something to look forward to at LDTO in June.
Yeah, and I think part of that is sort of the sunsetting of the Novak report, and then sort of tracking of, I mean, I think there's still maybe a couple recommendations on there that we still want to continue to move forward, but I think, you know, sort of we can stop probably calling it the Novak report now, and actually have more just a tracking mechanism for the process improvements that we're working on, and that'll be part of the conversation with LDTO. The other piece of that, which the team has started embarking on, is looking at kind of what we're calling an ordinance audit, which will comprehensively look at all of our development-related ordinances and do comparisons with sort of what, you know, kind of what are sort of state requirements, what are, you know, best practices that we've seen from other agencies, and then what do we require from the city? And in a lot of ways, our ordinances conflict with one another because we've just kind of continued to layer things on top of each other without looking at how the ordinance all talk to each other and work together. So that will be part of that process as well. And so very excited, and I want to thank, you know, Allison and the rest of the department heads that are a part of that process and are looking at that in great detail.
Thank you. This is great news that we're implementing those Pathways to Yes, the ordinance audit, and the pilot incentive program. Look forward to the upcoming meeting. And it gets into this. It is time to sunset, I think, Novak report. We have that chart for every LDTO meeting with the 31, and most of them have been checked off. Some of them are always going to be ongoing, but appreciate that we're able to take the next step and gain the momentum. So thank you. Those are all the questions I will reserve to after public comments. Thank you.
All right, very good. With that, we will move to public comment. I have a speaker slip here, Jared Gorin.
Hi, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning, and I'm excited to come down here this afternoon and support this effort and these ordinance revisions. They're fantastic. We have a lot of clients that are dealing with exactly the types of projects that these are going to impact. And, you know, this is just a great example. It's almost like a case study of how you should go and approach an ordinance like this. Staff came out and talked to us and a lot of other design professionals early on to really figure out where the pain points were for all of us and our clients. And they did an amazing job identifying things up front and then coming up with some really practical solutions. And like, there are so many things in here I could talk about and why they're great, but I'm just going to limit this to two, which is just this whole concept of having really clear standards on one hand that allows them to quickly filter things out from having to go and overload hearings, but still providing a relief valve for things that might want to go outside of that if an applicant really elects that they want to do something beyond those standards. And then at the tail end of the process, really eliminating all of these appeal points, which are just a complete waste of time and money for everybody, including but not limited to the city. These hearings are really expensive, and savvy opponents know how to really milk that system and just make things hard for applicants and just delay projects. I think a lot of some appellants that we've faced, they knew that they weren't going to prevail, but they just did it just to sort of almost out of spite at the city and at us, and I think taking that away that's a major step forward. So I really want to just say thanks to staff. You guys have just done an excellent job, and I really recommend that you guys accept this and approve it pretty much just the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers online, Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, we'll come back to council for deliberation. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a few of these lottery days in my past, and that's when Jarrett Gordon and I both talk the same way in this type of land use hearing. So I'm on my way home tonight and going to pick one up. So this was a lot more exciting at Ordinance Committee. We got to ask a lot more questions and act a little more casually, but I just want to thank you. I know it's a lot of work, and I think I popped up then and said, hey, we need to do this every year to get the list of what happened during that year that looks repetitive and do it again. And I'm your best friend that way, I know. But just some things I want to highlight, a couple of them you already heard. So always grabbing repetitive, like near unanimous decisions, and just get those out of the process, get those into over-the-counter, just automatic type of thing, and quit just torturing everybody, staff and the applicant, and giving an opportunity for the crazy people to show up. So the appeal timing, great improvement too. I know that's always, we can do it here, we can do it more than once, so it's been out of control. I always appreciate the pictures and the diagrams. I'm a big fan of that. I appreciate something Jarrett brought up too, that I asked that a couple times too, like, yeah, there's an easy way, and the other way is there's always a pathway. So we're here to make it easy when you show that it's like most other things that always go through here and get approved. And we're not saying you can't do it another way. There's always another pathway. The Santa Barbara way, but it's another pathway. And then the guardrails along there too, on when people can just sniff something and pull it aside and send it somewhere, like the show can send it to Planning Commission, just so somebody's not, it doesn't develop into people just beginning to push the envelope because we're not really paying attention and just kind of weaseling in there. But when you see that going sideways, like a bunch of white houses or something like that, like we talked about earlier, like white is the new whatever color, that there's an opportunity for somebody at multiple stages to put that way. So those are all my high points. It's a really big work product, and I'm just pretty simply satisfied with those points right there and pretty trusting on the rest of it. So just want to thank you for all the work, and I think you'll probably immediately, as soon as you get this out and work with all the people that work with it, I think everybody will start to see immediate improvements. So thank you.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Henry David Thoreau once famously wrote, "Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity." And I'll use Mr. Gordon as well. I think if he was just, until today, if he was to describe our process, it would be complexity, complexity, complexity. So I just wanted to say it is great that we went through this process. I want to thank our staff and the community for coming together up front. I really appreciate the the words that Mr. Gordon put out there about the process, because I think that when we get that feedback, especially here in the chambers, it signals to us that as we go through other processes, that's a model to continue to use and to have that up front. So my comments are very similar to Councilmember Jordan's. This is an opportunity, again, that we are looking to improve our efficiencies, better serve the public, have more efficient outcomes, but also preserve the neighbor's ability. That's why the hedge issue was so important, and the fencing, to have a say in their neighborhoods as well. So we're not just giving it away. We're striking that balance. If you go back to the Novak report, there was even a recommendation in there, I think, that it came out or possibly even eliminate the single-family design board, and we quickly said, no, we're not doing that. And now we've achieved that balance, and I think we're in a much better place. And I'm really excited for the next Long-Range Development Oversight Committee meeting with the Pathways to Yes. I think it's going to be using the momentum from this and the goodwill of this process that we have with the community to engage on the Pathways to Yes, as well as the new direction that we're taking for these projects. So I'm fully supportive of this today and appreciate all that it's going to do in terms of city efficiencies and beneficial use for the public. Thank you.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. And we did hear this at Ordinance Committee, and it was, as Councilmember Jordan says, exciting, and having this come forward. I'm really, really happy that the findings are now more clear. In sort of a different perspective, as someone who usually sides with the appellant, myself, over and over again over the years, this frustrating question of if they don't have to do them, if they're just guidelines, why do we have them? And if we can't, honor them in appeal or have those be in our findings. So I really appreciate when things are clear and laid out and everybody knows what to expect. And it's been years of talking through. It's, gone through many painful appeals of, the difference between the standards and the guidelines. So thank you for making these standards. And then also thank you for the flexibility that an applicant can go through a different process if they want something bolder than what's already here. And really appreciate that. And really appreciating that some of the issues that came up over and over again had to do with privacy or balconies looking down into windows. So I think these have been sort of a little bit scaled back, or that taken into account, that good neighbor, that portion of the good neighbor guideline being more of a standard. Very much appreciating that. And things like making the required covered parking optional is huge. There are so many little things to do to a garage that you just can't do because now you have to make another covered parking area that isn't even possible in so many places. So this is it seems like such a small thing, but people just don't use their garages anymore to park in. And especially, I talk about the hillsides and some of the older places that they were built for horse-drawn carriages or something. And, even a Prius can't fit all the way in, but if you're going to do anything with this little tiny space, then you have to make a covered parking in space that doesn't even exist on your property, and especially on a hillside where you can't just always do it right where it's convenient. So these little things and the flexibility on how people can use their garage space. We've talked about this for years, and I think that's huge. It just matches how people live now and how they use the space that's available to them. So, so much appreciation for that, and for the whole, all of the amendments here too. And again, the other things in your back pocket slides, the story polls, different things that we've talked about different times, and then they came forward. A note on the Novak report and the long-range development team. As the maker of the motion that proposed the ad hoc committee on long-range development team, and the idea was that council there would be 3 members of council who are on that and 3 members of council who are on the interim State Street ad hoc. The idea was that it was, sort of splitting council so that it was broadly covering these 2 different areas. So I'm wondering, as we're checking off the things from the NOVAC, it seems to me an ad hoc is supposed to have a specific purpose and not sort of go on into forever, because these are things that are of interest to all of council. And I think we sort of decided that interim State Street operations were of interest to all of council. So I'm just wondering, in this next iteration past the NOVAC report, not maybe to decide today, but the initial intent of that, and maybe it's become more than that, but the ad hoc of it was temporary and thought the NOVAC things would happen faster. So just into the future, considering whether that continues to be its own team or not. And it would probably be reconfigured, into the next years anyway, so something to think about.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Sneddon, happy to, I think what might be useful, it is something that we are interested in daylighting, more broadly. And so, after the June meeting, I think it might make sense to bring it back to the full council for conversation and just kind of how the council wants, or does the council want a land development team oversight committee as an ongoing committee that then would become part of, the annual sort of appointment process, and then would be responsible for just kind of reviewing these process improvements on an ongoing basis. So happy to do that. I think that makes a lot of sense, just given the interest in the community in all of these processes, to bring it back to the full council.
And
after.
the rest of council too. And again, if it's not balanced with sort of like dividing council up to tackle immediate things as ad hocs, it's sort of, I would like the opportunity to talk about whether, and maybe it is something that has value long-term, but it has sort of, bifurcated council that way. So, but really excellent, so happy these are moving forward, and thank you.
Okay, any further comments? All right, I think we have consensus. Let's break out s'mores. Anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Santa Maria.
Second.
Second by Gutierrez. May we have the vote, please?
Yes, this is a motion by Councilmember Santa Maria, seconded by Councilmember Gutierrez for the recommended actions for item 9. Please go ahead and vote.
All right, very good. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Good job. All right, we will move on to the next item.
Next item is the annual report on community oversight of law enforcement and work plans submitted on behalf of the Fire and Police Commission.
All right, very good.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Ms. Anderson?
Oh, this is an end show. Let's see. There we go. I'm Barbara Anderson, Senior Assistant to the City Administrator, and I also serve as the designated independent police monitor within the City Administrator's office. I'm joined this afternoon by Police Chief Kelly Gordon to present the annual report on community oversight and this year's work plan on behalf of the Fire and Police Commission. This is our 3rd year of submitting this report and work plan to City Council as part of the new duties and authorities of civilian oversight that were assigned to the Fire and Police Commission back in 2022. And this annual report is required per ordinance to be submitted to Council every year. We're a little bit delayed just because the Fire and Police Commission meeting was canceled in February, but we are back on track to submit this report for your consideration. The commission evaluates its work plan annually and makes adjustments as needed to meet their oversight duties and responsibilities. This process is facilitated in coordination with the police monitor role in the city administrator's office. We'll walk through briefly the planning objectives from last year and then speak to accomplishments. The first objective was to identify and implement ways in which the community can engage more in the work of the Fire and Police Commission. As you know, our community was impacted significantly by federal immigration enforcement activities that began escalating in summer of last year. The community engagement and listening processes in response to these incidents were facilitated by City Council. So the commission felt strongly that this was an objective that needed to continue forward because they recognized that there were few spaces where community members felt safe to be in public dialogue and engage, I will say, with government agencies and government officials at the time. So they took a step back and really tried to understand how to better facilitate this process moving forward. So this is an objective you will see in this year's plan as well. The second objective was to coordinate with city staff to publicize meetings of the Fire and Police Commission and ensure that public has access to relevant data and meeting materials. So thanks to our city's communication team and our public information officer, each meeting was publicized through multiple channels, including our city news and brief, as well as throughout all of our social media platforms. And so we advertised both that the meeting was occurring and when, as well as what was being detailed and discussed on the agenda that month. The third objective was to gain a better understanding of the investigatory process for complaints of police misconduct and use of force incidents. So the police chief and her leadership team actually facilitated educational briefings with our commissioners last year. And the feeling was that these sessions were very valuable and would be conducted again this year. Again, these were smaller briefings so that commissioners felt comfortable asking questions and that these questions could be answered in detail. But they're continuing to learn about that process, as well as the additional retraining requirements that were guided by council, implemented by ordinance, and facilitated with the support through our office. The last objective was to receive additional training and consultation on how the commission exercises its ability to make public statements. I will say, given the importance of other meeting kind of agenda items for the year, we weren't able to do a deeper dive here, but we have facilitated public statements on behalf of the commission in years prior. So the importance for us moving forward is to make sure that commissioners that are relatively new understand what this process is and how it can be facilitated. I just wanted also to highlight the annual reporting requirements that are now overseen by the Fire and Police Commission. So this happens every year. A lot of the first quarter of the year are these now regular reporting processes. This includes the annual report on community oversight, annual report on complaints and investigations, which you'll hear today, use of force, use of military equipment, and then the state's Racial and Identity Profiling Act annual report. Additional topics that were delved into in terms of the commission duties last year included review of the tow rotation list and policies, which is part of their quasi-judicial duties. This occurs every year, but last year we did a substantial update as well as some changes in fees. They also received the statement from the police chief on immigration violations. Again, this was in the aftermath of a town hall forum in July of last year, and we continue to use the Fire and Police Commission as another opportunity to educate the broader community. They also received an informational presentation on the Fire Prevention Bureau, an overview of the police department's, at the time, new Blue Envelope program, and then the Regional Fire Communications Center, of which the commission will be facilitating tours next month. The commission was also briefed on the launch of the new Genesis evacuation software. So I know this has been mentioned to you, but they were given detailed briefings on how both agencies will use that, as well as how we'll use it to interface better with the broader community during emergencies. So this year's work plan, We'll continue to focus on ways in which the community can engage more in the work of the Fire and Police Commission. As mentioned before, this is something that we want to delve into a lot deeper, and it really is the direction of the commission to meet folks where they are, where they're most comfortable, sit with them, be in listening sessions with them, understand how they can work to support the police department and the fire department, and bridging that greater understanding with the broader community. The commission also considered the appointment of a commission liaison for community meetings. This actually occurred at its last meeting. This liaison is specific to city staff scheduled and facilitated meetings with community groups. We felt it important to have a designated representative from the commission in attendance, again, continuing to bridge understanding between the work of the Fire and Police Commission and the public. The commission also added an objective per council's direction. So this was our meeting in March regarding the resolution that affirms the city's response to federal immigration enforcement activities. It was actually brought up by Councilmember Harmon to have the Fire and Police Commission step into and lean into the role that we have established for them, which is being this public forum for information sharing, regular reporting, and debriefing incidents that are critical and impact our broader community. Also, lastly, as mentioned, we want to continue to delve deeper into the understanding of the investigatory process for complaints. It really is their primary role, so we want to continue to prioritize that moving forward. So at this time, I will turn it over to Chief Gordon to provide the annual report on complaints and investigations.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council members. So we'll give a quick interview as we go through. I'm going to take this so I can actually turn my head since I don't have it in front of me. So this year we did the report just slightly different so that we could give an overall big picture at the start of this about our actual calls for service, our actual crime data, and calls for service that support it. So I think it's good for council to see this so you have a clear understanding. So for last year, over 69,000 calls for service, over 21,000 officer-initiated actions, over 1,000 cases closed by our Investigations Bureau. You can see our average response times, which for some reason on here turned out a little weird. I'm not sure what. But we are meeting our goals on our response times. You can see that for crimes against persons, we had a slight increase of 0.6%. But when you actually look at the total number, it's a difference of 11 offenses. So when you look at the percentages, you can also see the corresponding numbers. Crimes against property was down by 9.8%. And then crimes against society was up 5.7%. But that is in large part because officers were much more proactive in dealing with some of the narcotics and other offenses that we see in our community. So that's proportionate, and you would expect, which we are glad to see, there's a proportionate decrease in property crime as a result of that. Quick hiring and recruitment recap. A particular council member, maybe Council Member Jordan, challenged me a couple years ago. And so I'd like to share that we have been really doing a fantastic job as a team in terms of our recruitment and hiring. We've been doing, our approach is a lot different, including using multiple academies, the number of applications that we're processing, how in which we handle our recruitment process. So last year, over 1,300 applications. We hired 22 professional staff. So we're almost at 90% positions filled for professional staff. 14 new officers hired last year, so we're at that 90%. Our attrition, not our attrition, I'm sorry, but our vacancy rate was 3 years ago 25%. So it's a significant increase, and I really have to give hats off to the team. I push them, I continue to push them, they know that, but it's fantastic. Last year we hired our new community engagement coordinator, and you can see that there's a significant corresponding the number of community events that we're doing, and not just big community events, but all of our smaller community events. We had went from 47 in '24 to 126 last year. So there's a proportionate to having someone who's focusing on helping us get organized and to do that. So there's been a big push around that community engagement piece as well. So with that, like I said, just a quick overview in terms of calls, crime statistics, as well as hiring. I'm going to just give a quick overview on the community and administrative complaints, just so you understand and as a review of how the complaint process works. We receive a complaint, it goes to our professional standards for investigation. It also, Barbara gets notified as our independent monitor, so she's aware and monitors the tracking of all our investigations. We assign it to an investigator, we conduct that investigation. The investigation's approved all the way up through the chain of command. We communicate those findings with the officer. We also communicate those findings with the complainant, who's typically a member of the community. And then whatever the outcome is, whether it's discipline, whether it's unfounded, or whatever it is, and we take the appropriate course of action. So an administrative complaint is something that's generated internally. So that doesn't come from the community, that comes from inside the department. It can be from another employee, it can be from a supervisor. But anytime that another member of the department becomes aware of misconduct, it's our policy that they have to notify a supervisor for review and investigation. So in 2025, we had 1 administrative complaint. You can see that's compared to 2024, where we had 8. So now we're going to talk about community complaints. What you can see is all the different ways. We heard a couple years ago about making sure that we had multiple different ways for the community to make complaints. We've increased that. We've simplified our complaint forms, taken a lot of different steps to make sure we're accessible. You can make a telephone, you can do it in person, you can do it in writing, email, online. You can come to the station, you can come to the city administrator's office. We take anonymous complaints. There's pretty much not a way that, if you want to make a complaint, there is in fact some place and some way for you to do so. So this last year, we had 11 community complaints in comparison to 8 in 2024. You can see that 7, which was the highest number, came into the station and made a face-to-face complaint. You had 3 that came in via online and 1 that came in via the phone. So now we're going to compare that number of complaints to our actual activity. So out of 56, over 56 calls for service, over 5,600 traffic stops, over 3,500 pedestrian contacts, and over 4,600 arrests, we had 0.02% complaints. So in 99.98% of the time, we did not have a complaint based on the activity that was taking place. And the difference when you see calls for service with this versus the initial number that you saw is we take out the animal service, parking enforcement, and other calls. So this is for officers, so that we're using that statistic specifically for officers. The different types of dispositions for complaints. So once we investigate a complaint, this is what the finding can be. It can either be unfounded, which means that we find that the allegation is not true. It can be exonerated, which means we say, yes, it happened, but it was in policy. So yes, the officer did what the complainant said they did, but it was within policy and it's actually what we train for. Not sustained means that we didn't have enough to prove or disprove the allegation based on the standards of evidence. And then sustained means that we sustained the complaint, that it did happen by preponderance of the evidence. So of the 12 complaints, 2 were unfounded, 2 were exonerated, 1 was not sustained, 3 were sustained, and we still have 4 that are being investigated. So you can see the difference between 23, 24, and 25. You can see the difference in the numbers. I'm not going to go over each of them, but you can see we are trending downwards with our number of complaints. So when you get those sustained complaints, there are different actions that we can take for those sustained violations. It could be corrective counseling. That means The officer that was involved sits down, we have a conversation about what they did, why they did it, what corrective measures that they can take to correct the behavior so it doesn't occur again. It could be a written reprimand, which means it's the next level where it is written, there's a course of action, and then you have suspension. They could take days off without pay. They could get demoted. They could get terminated. So you can see 25, 24, and 23. For the 25, we had 2 corrective counselings and 1 suspension for the sustained violations. And you can see how that compares with the years prior. And then we'll talk about policy a little bit. So these are the policies. So for the policy violations, and we just picked the most serious policy violation out of whatever the allegation is. So there were 4 failure to act, 3 rude and discourteous, 2 discriminatory, 2 related to use of force, and violation of criminal statute. And you can see how those add up together. Now, before we get into the training overview, the one thing I will say is that for all sustained allegations, there is training that goes with it. So if someone receives corrective counseling, suspension, whatever the discipline is, the point of discipline is not to punish, it is to change behavior and to help someone correct their deficiencies and become a better police officer. So all of those include training for us. So like I said, whether that's corrective counseling or whether that is suspension or whatever the result is that we provide training to go with it to address those issues. Now, when you look at the training overview, we have a very specific training philosophy. You'll see Officer Duffy here. He is our training officer. Over the last year, we've moved training under community accountability, which has made a big difference because now it is directly related where when we see things in terms of use of force, complaints, just different things that we see, whether it's in patrol or investigations, we can now customize our training to address those issues that we're seeing and make us more responsive and a better trained department. So the two go hand in hand at this point. And now there's an increased nexus between the two. Training's data-driven. It's based on community feedback, performance metrics. It's tailored to meet the needs of our department, and it's all about growth and improvement. So for 2025, our training goals were to update all of our internal post-course curriculum, train the post-curriculum, not just biannually, but annually. So we're required by post to do it biannually, but now we've done it so that we've increased our training cycle so that we're hitting those core elements every year instead of every 2 years. Like I talked about before, we use those use of force and those other metrics that we have so that we can guide our training. For example, our training officer looks at every single use of force. He's also one of our use of force experts. And if we see a pattern where it's not necessarily, well, it's not misconduct, but it's something that we're seeing as a pattern, where maybe officers are not taking control early enough, or there's a technique that they're not using or that they are using, we can then change our training to address it so that we're reducing injuries to our community members and also in reducing the injury to our officers as well. So for 2025, our accomplishments, we created our 4 and 6 hour arrest and control course, driving course, firearms, mobile field force, use of force, bicycle control. So all of our coursework that we used to have to send officers out, we even updated all of our internal training so that we can do all of it in-house. We have a subject matter expert for each course now. So now instead of just what you'll see our post, we also did an extra 3,000 hours of additional structured training on top of the post training. This is what you see is what's the post CPT required training, which is 4 hours of tactical firearms, driver training, 4 hours, arrest and control, strategic communications, use of force, and first aid. If we just did this minimum, it's not enough in any way, shape, or form. So for us, we actually did over 8,000 hours of post-training last year. which in comparison to the year before, we did 7,600 hours. So we've increased our number of post-training hours. You can see we did a lot of instructors to get those subject matter experts, because all of our instructors have to go to specific instructor courses, firearms, traffic safety and investigations, first aid, leadership, crowd control, specialty training, arrest and control, use of force. You can go down the whole entire list, and these are just the top categories. So beyond just those post-trainings that we just talked about, so beyond that 8,000 hours, we also do briefing trainings. We also do training bulletins. We also do structured internal training that may just not be post-counted hours. We do classes, conferences. Right now, one of those that some of our officers is at the First Responder Conference, Wellness Conference that's occurring. So it's not just about the tactical skills, it's also about the soft skills, which are very important. Our local joint agency trainings, like what we do with the airport, and then specialized private party training. One of the things that we've added this year, and I think it's probably on the next slide, I'm probably getting a help, no, is we have a company called the Briefing Room, which provides short videos that we can give to all our briefings to train on particular legal topics. Oh, see, there it is right there. So that 95 hours equals not just the 95 hours overall, but if you multiply that by the number of officers we have, it's actually a lot of training. We want to highlight a couple of items. Co-response team, I know there's been a lot of conversation about that, and we talked about that in the budget workshop. We have two very, very competent co-response teams. We have the officers who are paired with clinicians from the county. We're very fortunate to have two fantastic clinicians. And we have 7-day-a-week coverage by having those teams spread out the way that we do. Very, very effective response to calls involving mental health, reduced escalation, less likelihood of use of force, better long-term outcomes. But the other piece is that they do a lot of internal training and support internally and externally. So with different community members, they do a lot of follow-ups with families to make sure that support services are being given, but they do a lot of training with our officers internally. And I will say, it's the first time that when I go to briefing, and I go especially nights where they don't have the team as late as they might like, it's the first time I've actually heard the request to have more co-response, which I will tell you, in the world of policing, is not the way it used to be before. So there's a great appreciation for what our teams and the relationships our team have with our officers, and the additional training that means that our officers get every day. Crisis negotiations response. So although we, fortunately don't get a lot of the larger incidents, this team and their specialized skills and their specialized training, our critical need is on the everyday calls for service, and that's where they bring those skills. So it may not be where you see the big call out, but you see them every day using those skills on calls that we have in everyday calls for service. So the additional almost 1,000 hours of training they get really pays off every day, because they use those skills on your routine everyday calls for service. That team consists of 10 officers, 2 sergeants, and is overseen by a commander. And then same thing with our special weapons and tactics. They completed over 3,200 hours of monthly team trainings. Same thing, they set that standard, they meet that post and that NTOA standard. It's 18 officers, 3 sergeants, overseen by a commander. But the reason I highlight this is, you don't often see them rolling out in, the Bearcat or Force as a team, but they're the ones that help us tactically de-escalate situations and handle those everyday situations so that we don't have to call the whole team out. They use all those skills on an everyday basis to help us appropriately problem solve and work through scenarios every day. And it's a really important, vital piece of our team and what they provide to us. And that level of training and skill that they bring is extremely important to us. Community outreach and training. So this goes beyond our officer development. We have our officers go out and do a lot of community demonstrations and training. A lot more public education, builds that public trust, but also improves training for our community. I think this just gives you an idea of all the different community training and outreach that was done in the last year. We talked about the number of community engagement events, but besides that community engagement, we did a lot of school youth outreach, a lot of e-bike training, almost every school we went to, vehicle safety education, PAL Discover program, Unlocked, which was drug awareness for youth and parents, scam education at the retirement homes, which is taught by detectives, our Blue Envelope program, which we talked about, community-wide preparedness. So we've done a lot of active attacker at various locations. We've done community academies in English and Spanish. We've done a lot of on-site safety training and assessments at community locations. So we proactively reached out. We've done a lot of work with Cottage Hospital, schools, library, churches, nonprofits, and businesses. So that community engagement extends beyond just your coffee with a cop. All right, so I know I went through that quickly, but in the essence of time, I wanted to make sure that you got the full picture and clearly available and ready for questions.
All right, very good. No, this is actually for council members, so. Okay, so if you don't mind. Okay, this is not an action item, so we'll just questions and comments together if you've got them. Ms. Snedden.
Thank you. I guess before my comments, I'll just ask, it's been a few years now with the committee and after the formation and how it's all gone. How's it going in terms of any adjustments to suggest about how it's being run or what the format is or function or just sort of from your perspective, is there value to it or not, or what the value might be?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Snedden, I think, the biggest, that there's been a big learning curve to go with it. I think the best part about it is everyone on their end and our end are very engaged in the process. So I think working through different issues that we've seen and the learning process, I will say it is a fairly significant work pill on our part, which I don't think was really represented in the beginning. There's benefit to it, but there's a lot of work that goes with it. So that would just be my one comment on it, is we want to make sure it's productive and useful. And, the reports are good, but I do wish we could streamline just some of it, because it is such a large undertaking for us with the amount of work that's done to provide the information. Like I said, it's a balance, because we want to be transparent, we want to provide all that information, but there's a lot of work that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be just my one comment, is as we think about what else we can push towards the commission, remembering that on the other end of that, that all requires staff time on our part. So that would just be my one piece of feedback, but I do appreciate we have really good conversations, hard conversations with our chair and our vice chair and all members of our Fire and Police Commission. So I am very appreciative of that. And I'm appreciative of the open communication and the ability to talk through issues. And I feel like that's been very beneficial for all of us.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Snedden, I want to just add a couple of points.
Yeah.
One is, when we first were implementing the civilian oversight structure, a huge kind of motivating factor was the lack of transparency at the time around complaints of police misconduct with our department, and not sharing the information more broadly about the avenues to be able to submit those complaints. And then the second piece is, so we've created, as the chief said, while taking in the consideration of the significant workload to make that happen, because now you've elevated the commission and all of our meetings are recorded and all those staff presentations are accessible, that data is at the fingertips for anyone who seeks to learn more. The second piece for us is the makeup of the commission and the training requirements. I think initially when I was working with city Attorney Doimus on those requirements. We thought, how are we going to be able to facilitate this? But that level of training really sets this commission apart from other city advisory groups, and I will say has created a dynamic between the commission and each of the fire and police departments, as well as the city administrator's office, that I will say we benefit tremendously from.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear, and that feedback too, and keeping that maybe when we have these annual report back, like having that be part of that too is how it's serving the public, but also the department, and also that communication. And for my part, I think this has really shown us what we all knew, but didn't have sort of the data to represent and have that communication with the public. And it was, I'm going to acknowledge, it was a hard transition to go through for all parties involved, and to have it be, from my perspective, successful in that it does show that we have a very honorable department, and that we are exemplary. And I think without all that, the data and the yearly oversight of that, that doesn't always come across in the same way. So I think that's, I'm grateful that it shows in this way. Just a few comments from what you put forward. I do think it's a good idea to have a designated representative for meetings with community. I think it's kind of surprising we missed that should be the through line there, and especially with that elevated training and the ability to have that communication. Congratulations on recruitment and hiring. That really attending some of the swearing-ins, and it's really impressive. And the cadets are so qualified and earnest, and so congratulations on that. Community engagements are clearly up, positive community engagements, and with that, I want to personally say that recognizing that you also are members of the community that you serve and live in, and I think this has been very difficult times, but I want to appreciate how often and how really open-minded and open-hearted coming and meeting with community members, and protecting free speech for, so many large rallies, and, Delegare Plaza, and No Kings, multiple No Kings, and even when that means it's hard to be on receiving end of that same free speech at different times, just really appreciating honoring free speech and all that takes to protect that. And these are hard times, and I just wanted to personally mention that, and thank you for bringing this forward.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief and staff, for all you're doing. Just a couple questions, and I'll do a couple quick comments. Just getting in the recruitment, incredible job going from 25% vacancies just a couple years ago to 10%. But could you speak a little more detail of how you've achieved that, and then also the time frames that it takes to get a new recruit, and why that's important when we're looking at budget cycles now in terms of setting you up for the future, because it's not something that you can just do quickly. So if you could speak to that.
So with the hiring process, we have changed our hiring process a lot. Whereas, before, if you put your application in, you could wait a couple, 3-4 months before you would hear from us. We're constantly pulling applications and reaching out to applicants. So we are literally making phone calls, literally trying to get them scheduled for interviews right away. We now, instead of doing a couple of hiring processes a year, we're doing interviews every month. And if we have enough applications to do 4 days of interviews, we will literally interview everyone. And we're doing hiring seminars so that we walk people through the process. We do things very, very differently that other departments don't do, because it's a different time. The candidates that we're hiring are different. They want that personal touch, and that's exactly what they get. And so we do things differently in the process. We do different things. What point they do a department head interview. We know that if we do the process the way in which we think it works. Our success rate is over 90% once we put them into backgrounds, with their success of getting through the academy and what that looks like. So we've gone to SBCC. We do a lot more work with the classes at SBCC. We've put a lot of emphasis on local hiring and not just going to different recruitment fairs, but not that we don't. Like, I interviewed someone last week that we went to a recruitment fair in San Diego, and they're willing to relocate to come work here. The biggest credit that I can give, though, despite all the changes in the processes and all of the things, is our hiring team. And that hiring team includes everybody in the department, because they are recruiting and they're out there. When we do a physical agility test, you typically have 10 to 15 officers and professional staff that just show up to support those that are out there taking the physical agility test, meeting with folks, talking to folks. We do a family night before they go into the academy so that their families get to come in the department and get to know each other, but also to get their questions answered and understand what the process looks like. We're looking for two things when we hire. I want someone to be a good person and a hard worker. They already show that they have the desire by the fact that they're sitting across from me, so that's what we're taking advantage of. And I'm very proud of the fact that when we did our last sergeant testing, when I asked the question in department head, what are we doing right? And they said, we're hiring good people. That's what we want. So then it's up to us to train. It's a challenge because you get so much natural attrition per year just with retirements. And we just, lost two officers that moved to Colorado. So the hard part for us in your second question is how long does it take? So hiring process takes us anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get them through background. The academy then starts. They spend 6 months in the academy. Once they graduate from the academy, they spend usually 3 weeks in a post-academy where we get them qualified and go through department procedures, and then we send them to field training. The field training program takes typically about 5 months. So from start to finish, if someone is completely on track, depending when the academy lines up, you're looking at about 2 years before they're out on their own. So that's why when we are not, and we get to that point where we were at that 25% level, it takes us so long to catch up. Because if you lose 8 to 10 a year out of attrition, you're barely keeping up with that attrition, let alone making up for that additional deficit that you have. So that's part of that struggle that we have. We've been doing things differently too, like with our parking enforcement overhires, those 3 overhire positions. If we have someone that we think, man, I think they will become a good police officer, but they need a little what we call time and seasoning. So whether that's because they need to understand really what the job means, or maybe they need a little more time to be physically ready, whatever that is, we might put them in that parking enforcement position for 6 months to a year to give them that seasoning, and then we transition them to the academy, which we've been very, very successful with. And there's a benefit for us and them and the community because they're out in that experience. They get that experience, wearing a uniform, doing parking enforcement. We can watch them mature and grow, and then we have that eyes on. They become part of our culture, and then when we feel like they're ready, then we send them to the academy. So there's a few things like that we do differently, but it doesn't change the fact that it is just a long process. The requirements for someone to become a police officer have only increased, not decreased. What they go through in their background is very, very rigorous. All the way to looking at all of their social media posts. Everything that they do in their entire life is scrutinized when they go through the background. So that background process takes a bit, and those requirements are very extensive now, even more so than they used to be. So, like I said, it's a long process, so when you don't have those positions or are not able to fill them, that's where you really get into trouble and get behind. So every time we hire, where you think you're, getting to that single-digit number of vacancies, then, like I said, then you have someone that moved to Colorado because that's what they've decided is best for their family. So it is a constant battle to get there, but I will say, as a result of the fantastic work our team is doing, this is why we're making progress. The team is fantastic. You couldn't ask for a better team doing hiring right now.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the level of detail. It's important for the public to understand what goes in to not only the hiring process, but getting quality officers. But it's also important for us up here because we work in 2-year budget cycles, and your department might be beyond that in terms of if things line up, you're lining up perfectly with the budget, but if they don't, then you're going beyond the budget cycle that we consider. So when we're looking at the budget, we have to keep that in mind for your department, and a couple others too, but yours in particular with the level of training, so I think it was important to do that. Just one other question, because it came up during the budget hearing last week on the co-response team, and first, congratulations on having such a robust team. It's creating great outcomes in situations that we get the press releases that come out in situations that could wind up a lot worse than they have, but they've been many times recently due to the level of our officers in the co-response wound up peacefully resolved and getting the person the care they need. And so could you speak to the co-response team and the security of the funding and the opioid settlement as well? I thought that was very fascinating when you explained what that was, and I don't think a lot of people understand what took place and how that is benefiting our department.
So Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, we hired a opioid coordinator. So we had settlement funds, a pretty significant amount of money that comes from those opioid settlements from different firms that sell opioids. I won't get into all the specifics of that. And then it's really a challenge to figure out what you can actually use that money for. There are rules and sets of rules for sets of rules. So we had to have someone that worked with us to really focus on figuring out how we can best use that money to benefit our community. So with the hiring of our opioid coordinator, she was able to look at, these are the different priorities, these are the different pots of money that you can actually use that opioid settlement for. One of the things that happens is a lot of the calls that our co-response officers go to are mental health, but they're also co-occurring where a lot of it has to do with substance abuse. A lot of the calls for service that our officers go to is substance abuse related. So there's a process on how we then submit to the state to get that funding approved, where we can show and we track how many of those calls for service related to mental health are also related to drug use. So we had to go through that process in order to be able to get approved to use that money to actually fund the officers that are assigned to co-response. So that allows us to free up general fund and use that opioid settlement money to pay for those 2 officer positions.
Great, thank you. It's very important because that's a secure funding for them, and it allows us, like you said, to focus on other community priorities by strategically using, and that's a very important service because it gets into prevention and a whole lot of other things that it gets into. So I just wanted to highlight that, and thank you for the clarification on it. And it's just in general, thank you for all that you and the department are doing. It's, again, incredible that we've gone from a 25% to 10% vacancy rate, and you have just recruits that are top notch. And that gets into when you're recruiting up front and you're showing that support and you're getting the quality recruits, it leads to the numbers that we saw of 99.9% of incidents of contacts have no reports filed with them. So it's just that level of commitment, that level of person that is committed to the community. And going to a number of the promotions that we have, there's also a focus to the extent we can on getting individuals who are from the community here. There's been a number that were born or raised in Santa Barbara, or at least in the Tri-Counties, that you've been able to focus on so they're familiar with the community, which goes a long way as well. And then thanks for the continuing education. That's an important part of it so that we're up on the best practices and look what other communities do. So just appreciation to the department for all you're doing. Thank you.
Ms. Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I will join my colleagues first in their gratitude, Chief, to you and your team, our officers. This was a really impressive report, as it was the last few years. And I think I've said this a few times lately, you know, when I was talking a few years ago about civilian oversight. Transparency and trust was my mantra. I repeated it over and over again, and it makes me so proud to see how well you all continue to live up and to earn the community's trust day after day. That's what we see out there. So I really appreciate that. And as this is my the last report I will receive as a council member on civilian oversight, I just want to take this opportunity really briefly to say I still so strongly continue to believe in the necessity of civilian oversight. At the time when we had this challenging series of conversations, a lot of what folks said was we don't need it. Our department is one of the best departments out there. And while I certainly agree, I think we do have the best department, not one of, the best department out there. What an incredible opportunity to highlight that. And I want to specifically acknowledge, Ms. Anderson, your work. It's not lost on me that you were in the middle of what was a very challenging series of conversations around setting up this oversight system, and to see the collaborative nature of what has evolved and the real success out of what was such a difficult series of conversations is just such a testament to your continued and unrelenting focus on building that trust and building that transparency, and to doing it fairly, so that everyone feels that they have a voice, our officers, our community members. And it's also not lost on me that you're in the middle of another very difficult conversation in this moment, and it's just reminding me how lucky we are to have you in that role, and the work you've done to build trust with all parties. So I had to acknowledge that. I didn't want to let the moment pass. I also think it's incredibly, I don't know what the word is, telling, remarkable, any of those, pick your word here, that we have so many ways for our community to give feedback, to engage, to lodge complaints, to put it very frankly, and that the numbers continue to go down. That is not due to the Civilian Oversight Committee, that's due to the work of you and your officers. But I do think it just speaks to this entire menu of community engagement that we're putting forth, and that this number has gone down so consistently, and yet we have more avenues, more opportunities for engagement than ever before, to me is real evidence that this is working, that what you all are doing is working. So I recognize that this is a huge amount of work, and honestly, it sounds like a huge amount of work, so I'm not surprised to hear that. But from my perspective, it is time very, very well spent, and I'm incredibly grateful that you all do it. And I believe in it, and I'm glad that as a city, we believe in it too. Thank you.
Ms. Santa Maria.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse. Thank you to our city staff. Chief Gordon, I really do commend you on such an incredible job from you and your department on the hiring. It is not lost on me that, a lot of times we hear constituents talking about, well, we need more of our police force out here. And I can often assure them our police chief is working hard on getting those positions staffed. I know you are. And these numbers, speak for themselves. So I only had one question about the trainings and some of the required coursework that's being fully internalized. That's an encouraging thing for me to hear, that we in-house are able to keep our officers, properly trained. Could you speak a little bit to the process of internalizing that coursework? Has that impacted your department's budget? Has there been any savings because of that? Or what does that look like?
So Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Santa Maria, it's actually allowed us to be more fiscally responsible. The way we use our training cycles, now every 6 weeks, all of our officers go through those trainings. But because of the way they work their shifts, most of that is not overtime at this point. And we're not paying travel for them to go someplace else. As we know, our location can be a challenge, whether, you send someone to Los Angeles for a training for a day. That means an overnight stay typically, that involves hotel, different pieces. But this way we're able to do that and actually The other big piece is that we make sure there's consistency. So things like leadership training and other things where, like the Supervisory Leadership Institute that our sergeants go through, that's an 8-month program, and that's really important that we send our sergeants to that, and that's outside. But the things that we can do inside so that we can, we have instructors that can do driver's training now. So now we do actually behind the wheel. We actually go to Allen Hancock and use their facility and or we go to the airport and use airport property so that, fiscally responsible. Some of the things that get us in trouble most is simple backing with a police car. It's one of those things, but using those skills and doing those things and addressing what we're specifically seeing in relation to use of force and the other pieces. And by creating those subject matter experts with our instructors, we're building that skill set too. So they're getting additional training, and that only builds and helps internally because they're getting that additional training. So your experts aren't from the inside, aren't from the outside, they're from the inside. So those pieces are really, really important, and it allows us to increase those number of training hours. So by going from 7,600 the year before to over 8,000, it's over 500 hours of increased training, which is a big deal for us. And then doing the other 3,000 hours that we're now capturing internally is really important. So it's that focus, it's being very intentional, and it only builds that level of expertise that we have internally. And there's still an important reason to send folks in, exposure to the big wild world outside of Santa Barbara, but it allows us to be more intentional about those trainings that we send to the outside and have more of the budget for that. But we have actually decreased our overtime usage on overtime by doing things this way.
Thank you so much, Chief. I had a bit of a feeling that would probably result in some financial, some savings, and am really encouraged to hear that. It just feels like a win-win, and really want to congratulate you and the rest of your department on, a lot of times, especially now that we're talking about our budget, overall as a city and our budget deficit, we're thinking about cost-saving measures. That doesn't always have to mean cutting salaries or cutting benefits. It can just simply be these creative ways of internalizing some of that, and it's truly not lost on me that you were able to increase training hours and still practice that fiscal responsibility. So again, congratulations on that. Thank you for that. And I think that just speaks to, for me personally, as the vice chair of the finance committee, I am just personally very grateful that you and your department are looking for ways, as every department is, right? But realistically, the majority of our spending that from our general budget often goes to public safety and, fire and police, and especially police. So as we take a look at our finances, as we comb through everything with a fine-tooth comb and find ways that we can close the gap, thank you. Truly, I'm really encouraged to hear this. And I do think that this is, you really are setting an example for how we move forward, in that public safety can be done in a fiscally responsible way, and that we can be, appropriating some of these funds, not just to what people would typically consider law enforcement, but, the co-response teams and everything. So again, thank you.
All right, very good. Well, once again, this is not an action item, so thank you very much. Well done. Very well done. Okay, with that, we will move to any council engagement reports. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Let's see, I think we didn't report out last week, so I'll do a couple. The ribbon cutting for Library on the Go van, very exciting. At HLC, 2 weeks ago, they heard the Bloomberg grant. They were very supportive of that. There was a quote, "delighted to see it," so that was nice support. They did note that they are sorely missing the architectural historian, and I believe that position is being filled, and it's filled, and they were very appreciative of that. So, and then they also heard again 901 State Street, the Music Academy project, and they were very supportive this time around as well. So that's moving forward. Attended Firewise Council meetings. Southern California Edison was a guest there about PSPS shutoffs and resilient communities and backup battery programs, and COMB, Kachuma Operation Management Board operation meeting. updates on the Sheffield Tunnel rehab projects and the capital improvement projects for the next 9 years. And you know that it's a very impressive operation, the Kachuma Operations Management team over there, and just wanted to share that. Attended Elected Leaders Forum on housing, and the main focus of that was the RENA number updates from each jurisdiction in the region, and then also attended the Roosevelt Hamer dinner.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attended the Central Coast Water Authority monthly meeting, and big focus on that was subsidence and then passing the budget. And the Santa Barbara Mission, St. Barbara Parish, had the ribbon cutting for the new ADA accessible ramp to the Mission. It's an incredible improvement for our community for access. You know, Councilmember Harmon was there, Councilmember Gutierrez. And it's the first, they said it's the first significant structural change to the outside of the Mission since it was created over 200 years ago. But a lot of thought went into that, and congratulations to the Mission for that. And then 3 events at the library were all very fun events. The Library on the Go, celebrating having the second van. And then on First Thursday, the Independent had their art installation of the 40 years of covers at the Faulkner Gallery. Congratulations to the Independent. What a great community event. It brought back a lot of memories for everybody looking at those covers. And some of those, like I remember that event, I thought it was 5 years ago, but it was 25 years ago. So everybody was making, going back in time. And then also on Library Plaza, which is always incredible that we can have events there now. There was the Italian Festival this weekend, and it was just very well turned out for the community. A lot of happy families. Kids were making their own pasta, and then we had some of the local vendors there, great food. And then noticed that a lot of people, my family included, went down on State Street. So I did exactly what festivals we hope is everyone comes together, and then we go downtown and support local businesses downtown. I know our finance director was there with his family, doing the same. I saw him, and they were all had smiles on their face with gelato and everything. So with that, yeah, look forward to having more events at Library Plaza.
Okay, and a couple weeks ago, I went back to D.C. to chase down some highway dollars with my compadres from SB CAG, and I got to spend the evening with our congressman, Salute Carver Hall, and we talked about a lot of stuff, including the dredge funding, which finally came to fruition for at least another year or so. And then Salute came back with some dough for our East Side Library, which we presented that check yesterday. So some very cool stuff is going on over there, and Salute is doing good work for us back in D.C. And with that, unless there's anybody else, we will adjourn. Thank you.